Chapter 1245, Birthday Celebration, 1. Just as everyone's gaze converged on Yiqing Tang, a loud laugh suddenly rang out. A tall, handsome old man slowly walked over. This old man's hair was graying, and he had a long white beard. Although traces of his age could be seen in the wrinkles around his eyes were brighter and more piercing than those of a man in his prime. Holy Lord of Shadows, it has been a long time. The old man smiled as he walked towards Yiqing Tang. This old man was the grand elder of the Luo family, Luo Zhufeng. Luo Zhufeng had participated in the battle with the powerful cultivators from the second domain and so knew the Holy Lord of Shadows, who had led troops to join the battle. Yiqing Tang maintained her composure when she saw Luo Zhufeng, who had sent people to hunt her down in her previous life, walk over. The smile on her lips deepened, and she said coolly, "Luo Zhufeng, it's been a long time." Luo Zhufeng said with a smile, "I have not seen the Holy Lord since that battle thousands of years ago. What a joy it is to see you once more today." Yiqing Tang smiled blandly but did not reply. When the Temple of Shadows was at its peak, powers like the Luo family were illustrious in central mainland, but still, they could not compare with the Temple of Shadows. "Men, invite the Holy Lord of Shadows to take a seat." With that, Luo Zhufeng gestured for Yiqing Tang to enter. The banquet had not yet started, and besides the huge giants, no one else was seated. Yiqing Tang sat down naturally while maintaining her composure. She continued to smile faintly while her gaze remained detached as if she was above everything. The undead who followed Yiqing Tang also sat around her. Luo Zhufeng made some small talk with Yiqing Tang. She either expertly responded with a few words or smiled wordlessly. The undead from the Temple of Shadows noted it all. The birthday banquet had been about to begin, but many were shocked by the arrival of the Holy Lord of Shadows. Now that Yiqing Tang and the undead were seated, Luo Zhufeng also smilingly invited the other guests to take their seats. "Burp, isn't it rather warm?" After Mi Qiu sat down with Lan Yu and the others, it felt that its surroundings were rather warm. It turned its head to look around and saw a scarlet figure sitting nearby. It was a man from the Blaze clan. The Blaze clan was one of the fire tribes. They had no flesh, blood, or bones. Their entire bodies were composed of flint and lava. Their bodies were always aflame, and they were highly resistant to any kind of fire-related attacks. The special characteristics of the Blaze clan meant that whenever they appeared, the temperature of the surroundings rose. Their blazing fire was only extinguished at the moment of their death. "Can you sit farther away from me?" a cold voice suddenly said in the Blaze clan member's ear. A youth from the Ice clan was sitting next to the man from the Blaze clan. He was as transparent as crystal and looked like an ice sculpture. His exquisite face that was formed from frost was now dripping with clear droplets of water, making him look like he had just been hauled out from the water. The man from the Blaze clan looked at the youth from the Ice clan, puzzled. "Why?" The youth from the Ice clan impatiently curled his lip that looked as if it had been carved from ice. "You're too hot." "But, it's cooler near you," the man from the Blaze clan said innocently as he quietly moved his chair. The face of the youth from the Ice clan darkened immediately. Chapter 1246, Birthday Celebration, 2. Burp, this Luo family is so interesting. They've actually seated the Blaze clan and the Ice clan together. Mi Qiu looked over at the disturbance and waved its tail lazily. When they saw that all the guests were seated, the Luo family ordered servants to serve the delicacies and wine that had been prepared in advance. As he looked at all the guests gathered under the lamplight, Luo Qi's gaze secretly fell on Yiqing Tang. He frowned slightly and as he looked at everyone enjoying themselves, he walked over to his older brother, Luo Feng, and spoke softly. "Elder brother, why is the Holy Lord of Shadows here?" "Don't know." Luo Feng shook his head slightly, his gaze also secretly moving towards Yiqing Tang. "Today is very important to great-grandfather. The Holy Lord of Shadows has been missing for thousands of years. Now, she has suddenly reappeared and is even in our house. What does that mean?" Does she mean to act against us? Luo Qi asked softly. The appearance of the Holy Lord of Shadows was completely beyond their expectations. Who would have thought that the Holy Lord of Shadows, who had vanished for thousands of years, would now appear at the Luo family Grand Elder's birthday banquet? Don't worry. It's not yet certain whether this Holy Lord of Shadows is real or an impostor, said Luo Feng suddenly. Luo Qi was shocked. Elder brother, are you saying that this Holy Lord of Shadows is fake? I can't be certain, Luo Feng said. The Holy Lord of Shadows vanished for thousands of years, and the Temple of Shadows has declined. If the Holy Lord of Shadows did not disappear, then where has she been all these years? Why didn't she appear when the Temple of Shadows declined? Also, many of the undead in this mainland are currently enslaved. Considering the Holy Lord of Shadows' temperament, do you think she would have ignored this if she was still in the Temple of Shadows? Luo Qi thought that what Luo Feng said made a lot of sense. Then, does Elder Brother mean that this Holy Lord of Shadows is an impostor from the Temple of Shadows? They are using this as an excuse to intimidate us. That may not be the case. Luo Feng shook his head. When I saw her chatting with the great-grandfather just now, I could not tell that anything was wrong. I felt that she was just like the Holy Lord the Grand Elder talked about previously. In that case, Luo Qi's brow furrowed slightly. Even if she really is the Holy Lord of Shadows, why does it matter? As I said, the Temple of Shadows and the clan of the undead situation has been unfavorable for thousands of years. If this Holy Lord of Shadows still retains her former power, then she would have already acted to cow the mainland. Now, she has emerged after secluding herself for thousands of years. I think she won't create any trouble, Luo Feng said. Realization suddenly dawned on Luo Qi. Perhaps she was severely injured in the battle with the powerful cultivators from the second domain? That's possible. Luo Feng nodded. The Holy Lord of Shadows' disappearance had coincided with the conclusion of the battle with the powerful cultivators from the second domain. That makes sense. Perhaps, she was seriously injured and afraid that others would find out, so she deliberately started the rumor that she had disappeared and secretly went into seclusion to recover, said Luo Qi. Luo Feng nodded slightly and looked away. He spoke to Luo Qi. The arrival of the Holy Lord of Shadows is unexpected, but why does it matter? Great-grandfather's plan for today will certainly succeed. The arrival of the Holy Lord of Shadows will even enhance the effect of great-grandfather's scheme. Luo Qi nodded. Elder brother, you are right. Nothing will go wrong for great-grandfather. Luo Feng patted Luo Qi's shoulder in satisfaction as his gaze swept over the hall full of guests. Chapter 1247, Birthday Celebration, 3, Luo Feng spoke coldly. After today, our Luo family will reach its peak. The Temple of Shadows was the supreme power in central mainland, but starting from tomorrow, our Luo family will rewrite history. Luo Qi nodded hard. Then, he put a smile on his face and went to entertain the guests. No one noticed the conversation between the two brothers. Yi Qingtang was sitting on a chair, maintaining a Holy Lord-like smile on her face. No one came over to chat with her, perhaps because of her status as the Holy Lord, and Yi Qingtang relaxed a little. But before she could relax completely, she suddenly felt a piercing gaze fall on her. Before Yi Qingtang could determine the source of that gaze, a figure suddenly appeared in front of her. Holy Lord of Shadows, it's been a long time since we last met. A suave old man was looking at Yi Qingtang through hooded eyes. Although the old man's words seemed courteous, his tone was filled with hatred. He looked at Yi Qingtang as if he would like to flay her alive. More than 20 people followed behind the old man. Some were old, and some were young, but all of them were dressed alike, with a soaring eagle embroidered on their chests. Yi Qingtang took one look and received a jolt. This old man was the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect, and Yi Qingtang had known him in her previous life. The Yunying sect was one of the super sects in central mainland and was extremely powerful. This Grand Elder of the Yunying sect was a force to be reckoned with. Yi Qingtang had merely heard rumors of the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect in her previous life but had not met him in person. However, she knew how powerful he was. At any other time, Yi Qingtang would not think much of meeting the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect. But now, she was meeting the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect in her capacity as the Holy Lord of Shadows. One must know that, thousands of years ago, when the Temple of Shadows was at its peak, the Holy Lord of Shadows had killed the Yunying sect Grand Elder's entire clan. Only the young Grand Elder of the Yunying sect had survived. After that, the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect had sworn vengeance on the Holy Lord of Shadows. He had entered the Yunying sect, and with his immense natural talent, his capabilities had advanced rapidly. However, before the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect could return from his studies and seek vengeance on the Holy Lord of Shadows, the latter had vanished. Yi Qingtang had not expected that her luck would be so bad as to run into the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect here. However, although Yi Qingtang's heart was racing, she had no choice but to keep her cool in front of the undead. She maintained her faint smile, calmly swept a look at the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect, and spoke. "Who are you?" Her casual tone seemed to completely ignore the hatred in the eyes of the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect. At that moment, the branch master of the Temple of Shadows was secretly observing Yi Qingtang's reaction. "I'm not surprised that the Holy Lord of Shadows does not recognize me. When you personally slaughtered the 1,000+ members in my Yun clan, I doubt you expected anyone to survive. For thousands of years, I have spent every moment longing for vengeance. And now, you have finally appeared." The Grand Elder of the Yunying sect's eyes were filled with contempt. He was so filled with rage that he smiled instead. Chapter 1248, Every Debt Has Its Debtor. 1. Yi Qingtang's heart turned cold when she saw the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect's bone-chilling determination to kill her. The Grand Elder was so powerful he could probably reduce her to minced meat with just one finger. However, Yi Qingtang forced down the chill in her heart. She glanced at the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect from the corner of her eye and laughed softly. "The Yun family? I'm so sorry. I can't remember such a clan at all. How could the Holy Lord of Shadows, who was once supreme in this mainland, possibly remember every one of the millions of clans she had slaughtered? Sorry, Grand Elder of the Yunying sect." She did not wish to say this either, but dozens of eyes from the Temple of Shadows were staring at her. The Grand Elder of the Yunying sect glared at Yi Qingtang. She had taken thousands of lives in his Yun clan, and now she had no recollection of it at all. "Whether or you remember them or not, I will definitely avenge my clansmen today." The Grand Elder of the Yunying sect bellowed with rage. The Yunying sect members behind him immediately advanced a step and were about to draw their swords. The commotion immediately drew the attention of all the guests who were present. At that moment, everyone's gaze converged on them. They looked at the deep hatred of the usually suave Grand Elder of the Yunying sect, then looked at the Holy Lord of Shadows, who was smiling sweetly and unconcernedly. Everyone's emotions were in turmoil. The Yunying sect's power was certainly uncommon, and the Grand Elder's abilities were sufficient to make him one of the top powerful cultivators. However, the object of his vengeance was the Holy Lord of Shadows, who used to be the most powerful cultivator in the entire mainland. Is the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect crazy? Is he really going to indiscriminately fight the Holy Lord of Shadows? His entire clan was slaughtered before his eyes. Anyone else would have collapsed, but all these years, the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect forced himself to survive to avenge his clansmen. I hear that he spent thousands of years training diligently. This time, he might be planning to fight the Holy Lord of Shadows to death. Yi Qingtang almost collapsed inwardly when she saw the Yunying sect Grand Elder's murderous intent. She could clearly sense that the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect was determined to avenge his clansmen. He would even sacrifice his life to do so. However, she was not even the Holy Lord of Shadows. How could she possibly be a match for the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect? Yi Qingtang lifted her eyes slightly. Her expression did not change at all when faced with the murderous intentions of the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect. She raised her head a little, and the smile lurking in the corner of her mouth deepened slightly. "Who are you to seek vengeance on me?" How hateful she was. Yi Qingtang grieved inwardly, but she maintained her lofty expression as if the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect was of no consequence to her. She flicked her eyes away and said, "Today is Luo Qufeng's birthday banquet. I am not interested in spoiling someone's joyous occasion." Yi Qingtang paused and swept a cold look at the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect. "You are not a worthy opponent. Not a worthy opponent. Today, I will make you pay for the lives of my entire clan." The Grand Elder of the Yunying sect was prepared for indiscriminate destruction, and he struck out with a thunderous blow. A huge, crimson dragon instantly blasted out from the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect's palm and roared towards Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang already sensed the crimson dragon roaring towards her with an apocalyptic force. Death seemed imminent. Chapter 1249, Every debt has its debtor, too, but at that moment, Yi Qingtang remained motionless. She maintained her composure as she sat on her chair. She even slowly picked up her wine cup, as if completely unaware that death was imminent. However, the second before the Crimson Dragon touched Yi Qingtang, the Temple of Shadows branch master, who had been biding his time, suddenly struck. A black whirlwind swept out of his wide sleeve and instantly transformed into a huge black dragon that headed straight for the Crimson Dragon of the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect. The instant the two dragons collided, the aftershock smashed the surrounding utensils into smithereens. "How dare you? Who is this lowly human who dares to offend the Holy Lord?" the Temple of Shadows branch master said coldly, but he was inwardly murmuring to himself. Before they left for the Luo house, the Holy Son, Ming Wang, had ordered them to secretly observe the Holy Lord's behavior to ensure that she was not an impostor. Along the way, the branch master had not seen anything unusual about the Holy Lord's behavior. When the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect had offended her just now, the branch master was secretly observing Yi Qingtang's reaction. But she acted exactly like the Holy Lord had in the past. The Holy Lord had maintained her composure and talked and laughed sweetly without deigning to pay any attention to the Grand Elder. Yi Qingtang did not react when she saw that the branch master had acted, but she inwardly heaved a huge sigh of relief. Every day that passed was traumatic. Considering the gulf between her powers and those of the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect, she would be unable to avoid that blow even if she wanted to. Even if she had the ability to avoid it, just the act of dodging would arouse the deepest suspicions in the undead. After all, the Holy Lord of Shadows, who used to be the most powerful cultivator, would certainly not act like that. In that situation, Yi Qingtang would have died whether she moved or not. She might as well maintain her pose as Holy Lord. As expected, the undead of the Temple of Shadows could not possibly tolerate anyone offending their Holy Lord. Hadn't they acted? Although she had passed the test, Yi Qingtang broke out in a cold sweat. The enemies that this Holy Lord of Shadows had made were probably each more formidable and tougher than the next. Every day was like treading on thin ice. When would it end? However, although she inwardly felt helpless, Yi Qingtang continued to maintain an attitude of supreme aloofness. She glanced at the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect from the corner of her eye. "I will not repeat myself. Since today is Luo Qufeng's birthday banquet, I will let the matter go. But if you don't appreciate my offer, then don't blame me for not giving you a chance. Grand Elder, pack up your remarkable abilities and go." "Rubbish. If I don't kill you today, I will let my entire Yun clan down. Come on and be killed." The Grand Elder failed to notice Yi Qingtang's inner cry. He only felt that the Holy Lord of Shadows was completely detestable, and he could not wait to tear her to shreds. Why won't he listen? Yi Qingtang sighed inwardly but continued to smile calmly. She raised her hand and emptied her cup. She spoke casually. "If you want me to fight, you will have to prove to be worthy of it." Yi Qingtang spoke without looking at anyone else, but her words were instructions to the undead from the Temple of Shadows. The dozens of undead from the Temple of Shadows suddenly rose, and a strong demonic aura flowed forth. The Yunying sect naturally would not give up. The Grand Elder of the Yunying sect gave a low shout and aimed the first blow at Yi Qingtang. Once the Holy Lord of Shadows entered the fight, they would certainly lose. Grand Elder, we cannot continue like this. Since the Holy Lord of Shadows has appeared, we can always seek vengeance another day. One of the Yunying sect elders took the opportunity to advise the Grand Elder. They had only come to offer their good wishes and were few and unprepared. They could not continue fighting for long. Furthermore, the Luo house was not far from the Temple of Shadows. If the Holy Lord of Shadows gave the command, reinforcements from the undead of the Temple of Shadows would certainly reach before their own reinforcements. The Grand Elder of the Yunying sect gritted his teeth as he looked at Yi Qingtang sitting peacefully nearby. His eyes were bloodshot with hatred. But having lived thousands of years, he was not one to act rashly, and he withdrew. Holy Lord of Shadows, I will certainly avenge the Yun clan. With that, the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect led everyone and swiftly left the Luo house. Yi Qingtang heaved a huge sigh of relief when she saw the retreating figure of the Grand Elder of the Yunying sect. A debt belongs to its debtor. Grand Elder, you have the wrong person. Chapter 1251, Misspoken Words. 1. The fight disturbed the peace of the celebration. Members of the Yunying sect left nothing but a mess behind. Luo Feng took a glimpse at Luo Zufeng and said softly, "Great-grandfather, those people of the Yunying sect, it's all right." Luo Zufeng shook his head. The moment Luo Zufeng finished his words, a deep burst of laughter was heard. Two figures appeared in the midair and landed in the courtyard of the Luo family. "Brother Luo, sorry that I'm slightly late today. Hope you can understand." A tall and strong elder with a beard folded his hands together and smiled at Luo Zufeng. The other skinny and shorter elder folded his hands and greeted Luo Zufeng as well. The guests were shocked as they saw the sudden appearance of the two elders. They both were one of the 12 saints of the central mainland. The tall one was called Hong Zhong. He was extremely strong and could destroy a mountain or sea with one fist. The shorter one was called Suamu. He was very powerful despite being small. Both of them fought during the fight at the second domain a few thousand years ago. Their help was significant, and they were friends with Luo Zufeng. The name of the 12 saints was very influential. Everyone was a renowned chief. They could make the central mainland tremble with a slight stomp. Luo Zufeng looked at Suamu and Hong Zhong and smiled. "It's all right, as long as you're here." Hong Zhong laughed and scanned through the mess. "Brother Luo, today is your birthday. What's wrong with the celebration?" Before Hong Zhong finished his words, his sight landed on Yi Qingtang, who was sitting in the mess. Both Hong Zhong and Suamu were part of the fight a few thousand years ago and had seen the Holy Lord of Shadows. Holy Lord of Shadows? Hong Zhong was astonished as he saw Yi Qingtang. "I did not imagine that Brother Luo was able to invite Holy Lord Senior over as well." Hong Zhong folded his hands together and greeted Yi Qingtang. "Senior, I could still remember how you fought a few thousand years ago. It's my pleasure to be able to meet you here today." Suamu also went forward and greeted her. "Senior, we were here to celebrate Brother Luo's birthday and did not expect to meet you here." Yi Qingtang stared at Hong Zhong and Suamu. She was surprised internally. The position that the 12 saints held in the central mainland was supreme. Their power and ability were terrifying for all. Yi Qingtang had only heard of their names in her previous life and met a few. She respected them greatly. However, Hong Zhong and Suamu, the 12 saints that she respected, greeted her in front of everyone and addressed her as senior. Yi Qingtang had mixed feelings but did not reveal any of them on her face. She just smiled and nodded slightly. Suamu and Hong Zhong did not feel anything that was inappropriate. The memories of meeting Senior in the past are still fresh in my mind. I need to thank Brother Luo for inviting Senior here and providing us with another opportunity to meet you. They added. Yi Qingtang could not say anything and could only remain calm. Hong Zhong looked towards Luo Zufeng and said, Brother Luo, if you told us earlier that the Holy Lord of Shadows is going to be here, Suamu and I would definitely be punctual. Chapter 1252, Misspoken Words, 2, Luo Zufeng smiled and was about to speak, but a rather cynical voice suddenly rang. It is indeed surprising that the Luo family can invite the Holy Lord of Shadows. However, the Temple of Shadows and the Luo residence are not far away from each other, and the Luo family has always been extremely respectful towards the Temple of Shadows. It seems that the Luo family probably yielded and pledged allegiance to the Temple of Shadows. Otherwise, why would the Holy Lord of Shadows grace us with her presence? A middle-aged man chuckled and cast a look at Luo Zufeng. There was no change in Luo Qufeng's expression while Luo Feng frowned slightly. That person who spoke was the manor chief of Dongyu Manor. Dongyu Manor initially had good relations with the Luo family, but they completely fell out due to certain matters 1,000 years ago, and there have been many disputes between them whether it be in public or in secret. It was already shocking that people from the Dongyu Manor came today. As expected, the Dongyu Manor chief had a scornful tone. Dongyu Manor chief, food can be eaten without regard, but that's not so for words. When has the Luo family yielded to the Temple of Shadows? The evidently irascible Luo Qi asked unhappily. So be it if you all yielded. This is your Luo family's matter. What is there to not admit? What is the Holy Lord of Shadows' identity? How can anyone else be able to invite her? If your Luo family did not yield to the Temple of Shadows, why would the Holy Lord personally attend this event? Dongyu Manor chief asked with a smile. Everyone was extremely surprised that the Holy Lord of Shadows came today and was filled with curiosity. Dongyu Manor chief, you must speak with evidence, Luo Qi said coldly. Dongyu Manor chief looked at Yi Qingtang and cupped his fists. Evidence? The Holy Lord of Shadows is right here. Is this still not considered evidence? Luo Qi had a grim expression and almost started a fight with Dongyu Manor chief. Fortunately, Luo Feng held him back and secretly shook his head while giving him a look to calm down. Yi Qingtang did not utter a single word throughout. Looking at the chaotic scene before her, she sighed in her heart. No ordinary person could be the Holy Lord of Shadows. The Holy Lord of Shadows is very reputable, and there would be many benefits if the Luo family yielded to the Temple of Shadows. Isn't there a saying that one will benefit by following closely behind heavy-laden wagons? Dongyu Manor chief chuckled. Luo Qi glared at Dongyu Manor chief, but before he said anything, Luo Zufeng, who had been silent all this while, suddenly spoke. Dongyu Manor chief, today is my birthday celebration. Your provocation is a little too overboard. Dongyu Manor chief scoffed. Just as he was about to speak, Luo Zufeng abruptly raised his hand, and a scarlet gleam shot out from his palm and into Dongyu Manor chief's glabella. Luo Qufeng's attack caught everyone off guard. People knew that Dongyu Manor and the Luo family were not on good terms, but no one thought that Luo Zufeng would suddenly attack someone on his own birthday banquet. Everyone did not know how to react for a moment. That red gleam pierced Dongyu Manor chief's glabella at once. In just a moment, the scarlet point on Dongyu Manor chief's glabella spread throughout his entire brain rapidly, and numerous red blood vessels covered his entire body. The entire process happened so quickly that no one could react in time. Countless red gleams shot out of Dongyu Manor chief's body without warning and flew right into Luo Qufeng's palm. The red gleam disappeared a moment later. Dongyu Manor chief's complexion became extremely pale in just a moment, and he fell to the floor carelessly while breaking out in a cold sweat profusely. Chapter 1253, Misspoken Words, 3, Brother Luo, today is your birthday. There's no need to fuss over small matters with these people and spoil your mood. Hong Zhong did not expect Luo Zufeng to strike suddenly, as it was very unlike his usual behavior. Nonetheless, Luo Zufeng merely lifted his chin up and looked at Dongyu Manor Chief, who fell to the ground. My powers. Dongyu Manor Chief was scarily pale, as though he was picked up from underwater. He suddenly looked up at Luo Zufeng with hatred. Luo Zufeng, you old jerk. You absorbed all of my powers. At that moment, Dongyu Manor Chief felt that his energy had been completely sucked away. All his martial realm that he cultivated for thousands of years was actually absorbed away by Luo Zufeng in that one moment. Dongyu Manor Chief's words stunned everyone. Luo Zufeng absorbed all of his powers. What did that mean? Other people from Dongyu Manor hurried forward and held their manor chief up nervously. They, as well, did not think that Luo Zufeng would attack suddenly. Everything happened too abruptly. As Luo Zufeng looked at the pale Dongyu Manor Chief, the wide smile on his face was laced with menace. Dongyu Manor Chief, I tolerated you for too long. It's you, yourself, who didn't know what's good for you. However, you should thank me instead. From now on, your powers will be mine to use, and this will be an honor for you. Everyone was dumbfounded by Luo Zufeng's words. Luo Zufeng really absorbed all of Dongyu Manor Chief's powers away. Senior Luo, Dongyu Manor Chief was indeed wrong, but there should be a line to everything. Isn't what you did too overboard? Right. If Dongyu Manor Chief was disrespectful, the Luo family can simply chase them out. Why must you do this? Many of the guests had some ties with the Luo family and Dongyu Manor, and the sudden incident truly caught them off guard. They just felt that Luo Zufeng's attack out of anger was too out of place. However, Luo Zufeng did not have any intention to stop as he looked across everyone with a smile. I'm afraid you are all mistaken. Luo Zufeng explained. I am very thankful that you all can come today, but from today on, all of you will become a part of me. Your powers will also soon be for me to use, and you all will accompany me to ascend to the peak of this world through another form, Luo Zufeng said smilingly as insanity filled his eyes. Luo Zufeng, what do you mean by that? Everyone was alarmed when they heard something off in Luo Zufeng's tone. Luo Zufeng chuckled. In the next second, a gleam enshrouded over the Luo residence, and all the exits were sealed by spells. Everyone's expression changed. Today is the most important day of your lives. Offering your powers to me will be your honor. Luo Zufeng looked up slightly as his eyes passed through everyone at the scene. It was only at this instant that the guests realized that the birthday banquet today was simply a trap by the Luo family. Luo Zufeng was actually so berserk to this state, he used the pretense of his birthday banquet to deceive countless powerful figures into coming only to absorb everyone's powers for his own use on this night. Luo Zufeng, you are a shameless, old bastard. Why did I not see through your sinister plans earlier? Chapter 1254, Ambush, 1, Luo Zufeng, do you want to become enemies with everyone here? I never expected you to be so sanctimonious. The guests who felt extremely deceived berated furiously. Yet, Luo Zufeng's expression did not change. He merely snickered as he looked at the numerous powerful figures before him who were his offerings today. There's no need to be angry. If I ever reach the peak, you all naturally have the credit for it. You all will also reach that highest realm that no one has ever reached before through another form. You all should not be angry and should thank me instead, Luo Zufeng said with a laugh. Pfft! Shameless old bastard. I will fight it out with your Luo family today. What the fuck? The Luo family is so malicious. Let's fight it out with them. The guests were completely enraged. They came out of goodwill to celebrate his birthday, but the Luo family was so evil to want to harm all of them. All the exits were completely sealed by the Luo family currently, and, in anger, everyone dashed toward Luo Zufeng and the other members of the Luo family. The Luo family was already prepared for this from the start. Many powerful figures from the Luo family who were already laying in wait rushed out and fought the guests instantly. The initially auspicious and peaceful birthday celebration was, however, a full-blown battlefield now. Many powerful figures took out their Dharma treasures as they engaged in a life-and-death struggle against the Luo family. Although Hong Zhong and Suamu knew Luo Qufeng a long time ago and had many years of friendship, they clearly sensed Luo Qufeng's viciousness at this moment and feared that no one present today would be spared from his malice. I really never thought that Luo Qufeng would become like this. Hong Zhong frowned deeply. Suamu said coldly, in the central mainland, the powerful ones have always commanded honor and respect. It's just that Luo Qufeng's method is too shameless. If we let him have his way today, we don't know what will come out of it. Luo Qufeng must have cultivated a secret evil cultivation technique to be able to absorb other people's powers and convert them for his own use. Brother Sua, let's go after him now. All right. Then, the two men bolted toward Luo Qufeng and attacked directly. These two out of the 12 saints were extremely skilled, and two destructive forces rushed straight toward Luo Qufeng. Luo Qufeng's lips curled into a snicker as he watched the two men coming for him. In just a moment, Luo Qufeng shifted his body slightly, and a scarlet gleam erupted from his body and shot into the sky. The wind from his palm formed a giant dragon, which lunged at the two men. Suamu, Hong Zhong, and Luo Qufeng were locked in a messy battle. In the chaos, all clans fully displayed their capabilities. The giant clan trampled around thunderously while their huge fists swung toward the light barrier over the Luo residence in an attempt to break it. Yet, despite the unparalleled strength of the giant clan, that light barrier did not budge at all even with their combined effort. Lan Yu and his nephew were fighting the Luo family members. Spreading the wings on his back, numerous light rays emerged on his wings and shot down successively. The entire battlefield was messy and in shambles. Yi Qingtang was seated in her original seat. She had not spoken, and thus the undead clan behind her naturally did not move. Amidst the chaos, they seemed exceptionally unusual. What is going on? Yi Qingtang's head started hurting as she watched the wild battle before her. Why did a normal birthday celebration become such a huge scheme? She just sent the Yunying sect Grand Elder away, but another even bigger incident followed right after. Chapter 1255, Ambush, 2. At this instant, there was no emotion on Yi Qingtang's face though she had already groaned numerous times on the inside. She had felt that there was something strange when Ming Wang gave her the invitation. After all, given the Luo family's influence, it was still insufficient for the Holy Lord of Shadows to personally attend a birthday celebration. She originally thought that Ming Wang intended to use this trip to let the undead clan following her observe her actions. But looking at the situation now, that was not the case at all. This little rascal must have bluffed her here because he knew the Luo family's scheme from the start. If she was truly the Holy Lord of Shadows, she would naturally be able to leave the Luo residence safely given her skills. If she was fake, she would probably die without a doubt. At this moment, Yi Qingtang gave her hats off to Ming Wang's method to tell the authenticity of her identity. She had long known that the Temple of Shadows was not so easy to trick. Yi Qingtang did not reveal any emotions, but she secretly observed the situation on the battlefield. Suamu and Hong Zhong of the 12 saints were present, and their skills were comparable to that of Luo Qufeng's. Logically speaking, they should be able to stop the Luo family's schemes. However, Yi Qingtang did not think that things were so simple. Luo Qufeng planned this from the start but still invited Suamu and Hong Zhong. Unless he was an idiot, he definitely would not involve people he could not defeat into his scheme. Before this, Luo Qufeng's aura was evidently different from rumors when he attacked, while his evil cultivation technique to absorb other people's powers was probably hidden for a long time. Most likely, he had greatly concealed his skills in the past 1,000 years. Just as Yi Qingtang was worrying, there was a new situation on the battlefield. Suamu and Hong Zhong joined forces against Luo Qufeng and thought that they would definitely be victorious. Yet, unexpectedly, Luo Qufeng's skills soared suddenly and completely overthrew the both of them. The two men increasingly felt a strain, and Luo Qufeng gained the upper hand after 100 moves. He waved his hands suddenly, and a scarlet glow resembling a red sun smashed into the two men. Boom, boom. Boom, boom. With two loud rumbles, Suo Mu and Hong Zhong crashed onto the ground by the overpowering force and spat out large mouthfuls of blood. They were clearly severely wounded by Luo Qufeng. When the Luo family members saw that Luo Qufeng triumphed over the two powerful figures, their arrogance soared. Luo Qufeng, you indeed hid your true skills. Hong Zhong clutched onto his excruciatingly painful chest while frowning at the uninjured Luo Qufeng. Flicking his sleeves, Luo Qufeng kept both hands behind him and towered over the two men whom he had known for years. Hong Zhong, Suo Mu, we have thousands of years of friendship, and I will not forget it. Thus, how can today's big event miss the two of you? Luo Qufeng laughed sinisterly right after. Rest assured. I will not let you two feel too much pain. You all cultivated for thousands of years, but your skills have already come to a standstill, and it's hard to have any greater progress. Why not give me your powers and let me use it instead? I will bring you all along with me to the true peak of powerful figures. Pfft, Luo Qufeng, you are truly shameless. To think that I still treated you as a friend. I never thought that you were this sickening. Suo Mu retorted coldly. A cold look flashed across Luo Qufeng's eyes, and he kicked Suo Mu on the chest violently. Don't disregard my kindness. It is your honor to be a part of me. Since you all are so stupid and stubborn, there's no need for me to be polite with you all then. Chapter 1256, Ambush, 3, Luo Qufeng's eyes sharpened. He raised his hand immediately, and a beam of red light emerged from his palm. His posture was exactly the same as when he absorbed the powers of Manor Chief Dongyu. Seeing that Suo Mu was about to fall for the attack, Luo Qufeng suddenly spotted a special figure in the scuffle from the corner of his eyes. He suddenly raised his hand and narrowed his eyes as he looked at Yi Qingtang, who was seated calmly in the middle of the brawl. In such a great fight, Yi Qingtang actually did not move an inch, and it even seemed as though the smile on her face never disappeared. The Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows was extremely renowned in the central mainland, and her skills demanded even more respect. A thought struck Luo Qufeng. If he could absorb the powers of the Holy Lord of Shadows and use it for himself, his powers would definitely increase by leaps and bounds. Luo Qufeng slapped Suo Mu's face immediately. Brother Suo, don't worry. I will absorb your powers later. Then, Luo Qufeng leaped straight towards Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang, who was initially sitting at a side, observed the situation. The moment she saw Suo Mu and Hong Zhong's defeat, her heart reached rock bottom. Amongst everyone present today, it could be said that Suo Mu and Hong Zhong were the two most powerful people. Yet, these two people were still not Luo Qufeng's opponent even after joining forces. As she had thought, Luo Qufeng had indeed concealed his abilities. Just as Yi Qingtang mulled over this, she suddenly noticed that Luo Qufeng, who was about to attack Suo Mu, took a look at her. In the next second, he threw Suo Mu aside and came straight for her. Yi Qingtang's heart turned cold. Why can't you find someone else? Why are you coming for me? All Yi Qingtang wanted to do now was to flee. She could not even defeat Cloud Eagle Sect's Grand Elder earlier on, much less Luo Qufeng, who fought against 2 of the 12 saints by himself. However, the undead clan behind her did not move. If she ran, the undead clan would see through her identity within 2 steps and kill her instantly. Yi Qingtang was about to cry as she looked at Luo Qufeng, who was already right before her eyes. What sin did she commit? Whether she fled or not, the outcome was still death. Holy Lord is indeed the Holy Lord. You are still so composed even in the face of such a situation. You have my admiration. Luo Qufeng looked at Yi Qingtang and said with a smile. Did she dare to move? She could not defeat him nor escape. Yi Qingtang was extremely indignant deep down, but she still maintained the dignity and composure of a holy lord as she smiled at the ill-intentioned Luo Zufeng. At this instant, everyone sensed Luo Qufeng's movement and, in the midst of the fight, their eyes silently focused on Yi Qingtang. Seeing that 2 of the 12 saints were defeated, everyone was already aware that Luo Qufeng's skills were exceedingly high and not what they could go against. Furthermore, Luo Zufeng continuously absorbed the powers of the people present, which meant that his skills would only become more and more powerful and that they would undoubtedly be defeated. In despair, all hope was on Yi Qingtang, who had not made a move yet. I've long heard about the prowess of the Holy Lord of Shadows. Although I fought alongside you against the powerful figures of the second domain, I did not have the opportunity to witness your skills. Can you do me the honor to exchange a few moves with me today? Luo Qufeng's words were polite, but his ambitious eyes revealed his desire for the Holy Lord of Shadows' powers. Yi Qingtang's heart raced furiously, but she did not dare to show any abnormality on her face and could only smile without saying anything. No. Even if she died, she would not show any unusual behavior. If she did, she would be dead. Chapter 1257, The Misery Inside, 1, Insolent. What are you? How dare you be so brazen to our Holy Lord? The Temple of Shadows Hall Master immediately stepped forward and berated Luo Zufeng coldly. It was the first time that Yi Qingtang found this ghostly-looking Hall Master adorable. Luo Zufeng cast the Temple of Shadows Hall Master a cold look and snickered. I am not talking to you. Afterward, Luo Qufeng's eyes landed on Yi Qingtang, and he smiled. Are you unwilling to give me this honor, Holy Lord? Since you're unwilling to make a move, don't blame me for being impolite then. Luo Zufeng took a step forward immediately as a red gleam floated around his body. How audacious! The Temple of Shadows Hall Master's eyes sharpened, and his ash skeleton hand violently punched at Luo Zufeng. Unfazed, Luo Zufeng struck his palm out, which met with the Hall Master's. An explosive sound rang the moment both palms crashed into each other. Yi Qingtang almost waved a banner and cheered for the Temple of Shadows Hall Master. However, in the next second, the Temple of Shadows Hall Master was staggered backward, and his expression changed. Yi Qingtang was silent. Her heart shattered once again. Although the Temple of Shadows Hall Master was powerful, Luo Zufeng was even more formidable. They could not win against him. How dare you clamor before me? I am not interested in wasting my time with you. Luo Zufeng shot a belittling look at the Hall Master and scoffed. Holy Lord, this person is disrespectful, and I am ashamed that I am not powerful enough. Please do make a move. Knowing that he was not Luo Qufeng's opponent, the Hall Master suddenly turned to look at Yi Qingtang and kneeled down on one knee. Yi Qingtang's heart was in crumbles, but she still maintained a composed expression. Amongst the undead clan which she brought, the Hall Master was the most powerful one, but he still could not defeat Luo Zufeng. Luo Zufeng did not sense Yi Qingtang's thoughts at all. A sneer hung on his lips as he looked at Yi Qingtang's indifferent behavior as though she had never paid any attention to him. Holy Lord, your dog is nothing much. You! The Hall Master shouted furiously. At this instant, the attention of all the guests was focused on Yi Qingtang. In the ambush that the Luo family laid today, Suo Mu and Hong Zhong were already defeated, and the only person who could control Luo Zufeng now was only the Holy Lord of Shadows. As everyone looked at Yi Qingtang's collected behavior, hope seemed to arise in their hearts. The Holy Lord of Shadows was extremely powerful, and perhaps she could conquer Luo Zufeng. Everyone's eyes were burning with excitement. Luo Zufeng was just right in the corner. If Yi Qingtang was not wearing layers right now, the cold sweat on her back would already have seeped through. Fleeing meant death, and so did fighting as well. The difference was only in the speed of death. Seeing that it was hard to get out of the situation, Yi Qingtang faked a casual chuckle immediately and finally stood up from that chair. She did not utter a word and merely smiled while standing at where she was, but her detached aura was extraordinary. The guests were brimming with hope when they saw that Yi Qingtang finally moved. Is the Holy Lord of Shadows finally going to make a move? People asked expectantly. The extraordinary skills that the Holy Lord of Shadows displayed in the war against the second domain was still fresh in one's mind. Even if she disappeared for thousands of years, no one dared to doubt her skills. Currently, Yi Qingtang was the center of attention and the hope of everyone present. Chapter 1258, The Misery Inside, 2, however, kill Luo Zufeng. That was thinking too much. If possible, Yi Qingtang would definitely be the one who fled the fastest. Unfortunately, she had no choice. However indignant she was deep down, she still had to pretend to be elegant and calm on the outside. Yi Qingtang was truly in misery. Are you willing to enlighten me now, Holy Lord? A look of deviousness darted across Luo Qufeng's eyes. He could no longer wait to absorb the strong powers of the Holy Lord of Shadows for his own use. Yi Qingtang looked at the ambitious Luo Zufeng indifferently and said casually, "There's no need for any flashy moves. Show me your most powerful move. I'll just play with you." Yi Qingtang's calm tone and words astonished many. The Holy Lord of Shadows actually told Luo Zufeng to directly use his most powerful move. What kind of confidence was this? The guests were so exhilarated that they wanted to cheer her on. Even more so, Luo Zufeng clearly felt the belittlement from the Holy Lord of Shadows. Since Holy Lord has already said so, I will not dampen your spirits. A cold glint flashed across Luo Qufeng's eyes, and the red gleam around him intensified by more than 10 times. The scarlet gleam exuded a suffocating aura such that even the surrounding air seemed to be distorted by his powers. Yi Qingtang secretly held her breath and concentrated. Her heart reached her throat when she saw that Luo Qufeng's powers skyrocketed suddenly. Her hand that was hidden in her sleeves moved slightly, and no one discovered her subtle actions with the concealment of her wide sleeves. A wild wind stirred up. The scarlet gleam around Luo Zufeng swayed like a raging blaze. In the war with the second domain thousands of years ago, I discovered a cultivation technique which could increase one's cultivation base greatly and even absorb the powers of others for their own use. Today, you shall try this cultivation technique that I cultivated for thousands of years. Luo Qufeng's face became twisted gradually, and his words stunned the guests. No wonder Luo Qufeng's skills skyrocketed. It was because he obtained fragments of the second domain's cultivation technique thousands of years ago. The might of the powerful figures in the second domain was truly astonishing. In the next second, Luo Zufeng suddenly shouted coldly, and the red light around him instantly turned into an endless torrent that shot towards Yi Qingtang. Every place that the red light passed by saw the ground shatter and slates crumble. Deafening roars pierced eardrums. Under such a powerful might, everyone turned white. No one expected Luo Qufeng's killing move would be as frightening as such mass destruction. However, Yi Qingtang did not move an inch and remained at the same spot. The smile on her exquisite face remained, and there was no sign of panic. The moment the torrent reached her, she suddenly raised her hand and waved slightly. Her wide sleeves moved like the flutter of a butterfly and swept at that devouring energy instantly. Greed filled Luo Qufeng's eyes as though he could absorb the Holy Lord of Shadows' formidable powers immediately. However, in his eagerness, the flap of Yi Qingtang's sleeves actually turned that destructive torrent into a stream of water before everyone's eyes. Right before it could touch Yi Qingtang's sleeves, ripples of water could be heard, and glistening water spread across the ground. Everyone was muddled for a moment. Chapter 1259, The Misery Inside, 3, What is going on? Why did Luo Qufeng's killing move become a pool of water? Had they not witnessed it for themselves, no one would believe what just happened. Everyone was aware of how frightening that move from Luo Zufeng was. Even powerful figures like Suamu and Hong Zhong would be shot dead instantly if they were hit. However, Yi Qingtang actually resolved this move so easily by just waving her sleeves gently. Everyone was astounded. While they were already very reverent towards the powers of the Holy Lord of Shadows, they were in full admiration of her skills after witnessing this unbelievable sight right now. What kind of skill is this, Holy Lord of Shadows? Why have I not heard of any skill that can produce such an effect? Holy Lord of Shadows is indeed amazing. I wish to see what Luo Zufeng can still do now. The guests almost cheered for Yi Qingtang. Even the Temple of Shadows Hall Master was stunned by Yi Qingtang's godlike move. Everyone was extremely delighted and respectful. While Yi Qingtang, who received the blow, was drenched in a cold sweat. What a freaking skill! She had already secretly concealed the Mirror of Illusions in her sleeves earlier on. The Mirror of Illusions could resolve any attacks, and she had made this preparation when she provoked Luo Zufeng to execute his killing move. No one smelled a rat since that Mirror of Illusions was hidden in her sleeves. Everyone only felt that the Holy Lord's move was unexplainable and that her skills were unfathomable. Yi Qingtang knew that she was not Luo Qufeng's opponent, thus, she wanted to take a gamble using the Mirror of Illusions. Suppressing her emotion, she looked at Luo Zufeng indifferently, and the smile on her face seemed to symbolize her disinterest. Little did they know that, she was really exhausted of abilities and only hoped that Luo Zufeng would be deceived by her move and not dare to act so brazenly. Shock filled Luo Qufeng's face, but he returned to his normal expression moments later. He was shocked by Yi Qingtang's move, but that did not eliminate his greed to absorb the powers of the Holy Lord of Shadows. Holy Lord is indeed amazing. I have truly broadened my horizons. However, I still wish to try again. If not for the fact that she could not defeat Luo Zufeng, Yi Qingtang really wished to smash Luo Qufeng's head on the ground. Had this fellow lost his mind from cultivating evil techniques? He still dared to come again after her pretentious act just now. Did he really think he was second to the heavens? Holy Lord, don't be courteous to this person. Kill him. The oblivious guests cheered for Yi Qingtang to quickly deal with Luo Zufeng. Yi Qingtang was filled with misery on the inside. The use of the Mirror of Illusions was limited. It could no longer be used again after using it just now, and Yi Qingtang would not have the ability to receive Luo Qufeng's next move. However, without giving Yi Qingtang any time to react, Luo Zufeng suddenly flashed across and bolted straight towards her. His fist, which contained all his strength, hurled at Yi Qingtang's chest. All Yi Qingtang felt was a chill around her, and she instinctively raised her hand to meet with Luo Qufeng's palm. The instant the two palms hit each other, Yi Qingtang felt an enormous force enter her palm and rush into her body rapidly. There was a huge gap between her skills and Luo Qufeng's, and Luo Qufeng's full-force strike was simply not what she could bear. Chapter 1260, What was going on? 1. This had already exceeded the limit that she could bear. Death seemed to be befalling in the next second. Yet, just as Yi Qingtang was completely disheartened, the enormous force injected into her palm seemed to be devoured by some energy. In the next second, a black air of death shot out of Yi Qingtang's wrist and into Luo Qufeng's palm directly. Boom! Luo Zufeng was hurled out suddenly. Black streaks of an air of death interlaced with his red gleam. Luo Zufeng fell on the ground suddenly and spat a mouthful of blood. Yi Qingtang was completely unaware of what happened. She initially thought that she would die without a doubt. Unexpectedly, the person who flung out was actually Luo Zufeng. What was going on? Luo Zufeng was ghastly pale as he collapsed on the ground. Streaks of black blood rapidly crept around him. When he and Yi Qingtang exchanged blows just now, he felt a rush of an air of death surging into his body suddenly, and he was hurled away in an instant. At this moment, his body temperature was dropping continuously, and a piercing cold was being injected into his whole body. Luo Zufeng also has this day. The Holy Lord of Shadow's skills are so frightening, yet Luo Zufeng dared to offend her. How ridiculous. I'm afraid he really is dead this time. Everyone grew excited after seeing Luo Zufeng being severely injured by Yi Qingtang's blow. Yi Qingtang waved a hand to resolve the enormous force and dealt a serious injury to Luo Zufeng with a blow. All of this made everyone worship her skills greatly. However, Yi Qingtang did not understand what was going on herself and felt that it was a little unreal as she watched Luo Zufeng crawl up from the ground. How did she hurl Luo Zufeng away with one move? Blood seeped out of Luo Qufeng's mouth continuously. His eyes were filled with malice, and the coldness around his body brought him much pain. Holy Lord of Shadows is indeed formidable. Luo Zufeng puked a mouthful of blood. Although Yi Qingtang did not know what was happening, the outcome was positive. She had an indifferent expression, and no one could tell her emotions. She had a manner like that of a supreme powerful figure, and no one dared to offend her at all. However, this was only a delusion, Yi Qingtang mumbled in her heart secretly. He is seriously injured already. Hurry up and stop. Why was he still staring at her and not letting her go? It had been 2 moves already. Were they not enough? Everyone wanted Yi Qingtang to kill Luo Zufeng, but, at this instant, Yi Qingtang only hoped that Luo Zufeng would back down a little and hurry and let her off. Luo Feng and the other Luo family members were shocked to see that Luo Zufeng was heavily injured. Luo Qufeng's skills were extremely powerful to them, and they were very confident of his skills, thus, they were never worried even when they saw the Holy Lord of Shadows. But now, brother. Great-grandfather, Luo Qi had an uneasy look. Yet, Luo Feng frowned slightly and said coldly, "Don't panic. Great-grandfather has not displayed his skills completely. Don't forget what cultivation technique great-grandfather cultivates. There are so many powerful figures here, and great-grandfather's powers will only continue to increase." Just as Luo Feng spoke, Luo Qufeng's eyes turned cold suddenly. Out of a sudden, he took a step forward and leaped up. He spread his arms out like an eagle would spread its wings as he flew right into the crowd and grabbed 2 powerful figures who were fighting with the Luo family members. Right. The Holy Lord is very esteemed, and inferior people like us dare not be disrespectful to the Holy Lord. The people were afraid that Yi Qingtang would be displeased and leave immediately. Thus, they hurriedly explained themselves. Holy Lord knows what to do and doesn't need you all to tell her what to do, the hall master said coldly. Instantly, everyone kept their mouth shut in fear that their last savior would leave out of annoyance. At this instant, Luo Zufeng, who continuously sucked the cultivation base of others, was hit with a rush of pleasure after feeling the powers that he absorbed. His eyes were red, and his desire to gain even stronger powers grew. Luo Qufeng's eyes landed on Yi Qingtang once again, and his bloodshot eyes resembled that of a vicious wolf. Chapter 1262, What was going on? 3. Not enough. This is far from enough. I still need more power. Luo Zufeng inched closer towards Yi Qingtang, and the thirst in his eyes was increasingly insatiable. Holy Lord of Shadows, you're indeed the most powerful. Give me your powers. I can become even more powerful. Red speckles of light flickered in his eyes as he lunged at Yi Qingtang violently. Has he had enough? Yi Qingtang wailed in her heart as she watched Luo Zufeng lunging towards him once again. She did not even know how she severely wounded Luo Zufeng earlier on. Now that his skills multiplied once again, how was she going to contend against him? She could not pray for a miracle to happen again, could she? Yi Qingtang finally realized that the Holy Lord of Shadows title was simply the source of a huge disaster if one did not possess the skills to suppress millions like the original Holy Lord did. Now that Luo Qufeng's skills soared, his speed was even more shocking. Given Yi Qingtang's skills, she could not even see Luo Qufeng's figure clearly and could only feel a killing intent approaching her continuously. With Luo Qufeng's current enhanced skills, anyone behind Yi Qingtang would simply be banished to death once they were caught by Luo Qufeng, much less herself, an impersonator of the Holy Lord of Shadows. At this instant, even if Yi Qingtang wished to escape, she was firmly blocked by the powerful figures behind her, and she could not move anywhere. All she felt was a surging killing intent rushing towards her. Luo Qufeng's figure appeared beside Yi Qingtang all of a sudden. He was smart this time. He did not confront Yi Qingtang with force and instead directly executed the technique to absorb others' cultivation base by slamming his palm on Yi Qingtang's shoulder and injecting endless red gleam from his palm into Yi Qingtang's body. Perhaps he was unable to defeat her by brute force, but as long as he used this cultivation technique, he could completely suck Yi Qingtang dry of her cultivation base in an instant. By then, he would possess absolute power that surpassed everyone else. Without even seeing clearly how Luo Qufeng approached her, Yi Qingtang felt Luo Qufeng's hand on her shoulder, and she knew she was in trouble. Luo Qufeng's technique was activated immediately, and an endless red gleam rushed out as though it wanted to completely infiltrate into her body and absorb all her cultivation base. Yi Qingtang's heart was completely cold. She was really dead this time. However, just as she was overwhelmed with despair, a force in her body was suddenly stimulated. The mutated heavenly demon bloodline that was buried deep in her body felt an external force attempting to suck her cultivation base and flared up abruptly. The mutated heavenly demon bloodline was stimulated instantly, and the power of the devouring bloodline directly counterattacked through the force that Luo Qufeng injected into Yi Qingtang's body. Luo Qufeng, who initially wished to absorb all of Yi Qingtang's cultivation base, felt that his technique to absorb cultivation bases was executed successfully, but before he could absorb a tiny bit of cultivation base, he suddenly felt an overwhelming force reflecting back at him through his own technique. In just a moment, an insurmountable force directly invaded Luo Qufeng's body. The greed on Luo Qufeng's face turned into astonishment immediately. What was going on? Not only did he fail to absorb Yi Qingtang's cultivation base, but his own cultivation base was beginning to be absorbed away by a force instead. Chapter 1263, To try to gain an advantage only to end up worse off. 1. The technique that Luo Qufeng used to absorb Yi Qingtang's cultivation base was completely dispersed by that huge force, which rushed into his body instead and absorbed his own cultivation base continuously. Luo Qufeng's expression changed drastically by this abrupt change. He hurriedly retracted his hand, but it was already too late. As his cultivation base was absorbed by Yi Qingtang, his complexion turned white gradually. Earlier on, everyone was alarmed when they realized that Luo Qufeng wanted to launch a sneak attack on Yi Qingtang and absorb her powers. But at present, they realized that there were no signs of discomfort on Yi Qingtang's exquisite face, and instead, Luo Qufeng appeared pale and drained. What's going on with Luo Qufeng? I don't know. I did not see the Holy Lord of Shadows attack just now either. Could he be wounded by the impact of the Holy Lord of Shadows' internal energy? Confusion crowded their minds. On the other hand, Yi Qingtang was overwhelmed with shock. It was natural for her to know that she possessed the devouring bloodline of the mutated heavenly demon bloodline. However, she was also very clear that it was simply impossible for her to use the devouring bloodline to devour the powers of other cultivators with her current skills and that she could at most absorb a few plants here and there. Yi Qingtang initially thought that she would definitely die this time, but Luo Qufeng's reaction surprised her. What exactly was going on? Why did Luo Qufeng's complexion become so ugly? Calming herself down, she faintly sensed that Luo Qufeng's powers were slowly absorbed by the devouring bloodline in her body, and the energy absorbed did not remain in her body but seemed to disappear into a void. Yi Qingtang was filled with surprise, but she also sighed in relief secretly. The heavenly demon devouring bloodline was the ancestor of many devouring bloodlines, while Luo Qufeng's technique to absorb the cultivation base of others must have been defeated and stimulated the heavenly demon devouring bloodline. Thus, there was a reflection of the effect. However, Yi Qingtang was also very clear that even if Luo Qufeng's cultivation base was absorbed by the heavenly demon devouring bloodline, it had nothing to do with her. She did not initiate the bloodline to absorb his powers, and it was the heavenly demon devouring bloodline which acted by itself. Thus, no matter how much power was absorbed, she could not use any of it. Currently, Luo Zufeng was not as arrogant as before. He could clearly feel that his cultivation base was being absorbed away continuously, but he had no means of stopping it. In no time, Luo Zufeng seemed to have suffered a huge hit as his entire body was flung out, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Blood stains streaked all over his ashy face, highlighting his miserable state. Luo Zufeng fell on the ground and clutched his chest that was almost exploding. He glared in disbelief at Yi Qingtang, who was completely unharmed. In just a moment, all the cultivation base in his body was completely absorbed away by her. Thousands of years of cultivation and his painstaking efforts to plot this scheme were utterly destroyed at this moment. How could this be? Never would Luo Zufeng have dreamed that he would actually lose all his cultivation base. As Yi Qingtang looked at Luo Zufeng, who collapsed on the ground puking blood, there was somewhat sympathy in her eyes. She could not be blamed for this. He was the one who insisted on absorbing her cultivation base, which ended up infuriating the heavenly demon devouring bloodline in her body. Not only was Luo Zufeng unable to absorb anything, but his own cultivation base was completely absorbed away by the heavenly demon devouring bloodline, and he even suffered the reflection of the heavenly demon devouring bloodline. Chapter 1264, To try to gain an advantage only to end up worse off. 2. It was really trying to gain an advantage only to end up worse off. Yi Qingtang faintly felt that the restless heavenly demon devouring bloodline in her body had calmed down, while Luo Qufeng's cultivation base, which the heavenly demon devouring bloodline absorbed previously, disappeared without a trace. That was Luo Qufeng's cultivation of a lifetime. While that energy was powerful, it could not be of any use to Yi Qingtang, as all she could use was the energy she actively absorbed. Despite this, Yi Qingtang was still very content. If not for the stimulation of the heavenly demon devouring bloodline, she would have long been dead. No one knew the reason behind the situation, but they could not hold back their astonishment when they saw that Yi Qingtang severely injured Luo Zufeng without doing anything. Only the Temple of Shadows Hall Master frowned slightly after witnessing the sight. Heavenly demon devouring bloodline, the Temple of Shadows Hall Master mumbled softly. Perhaps no one could tell, but he did. The reason why Luo Zufeng was seriously wounded at the heavenly demon devouring bloodline within Yi Qingtang was stimulated. Moreover, it was stimulated passively, and it was not Yi Qingtang who actively absorbed Luo Qufeng's cultivation base. This caused the Temple of Shadows Hall Master to become suspicious. However, he did not show too much emotion and merely observed silently. On the other hand, Yi Qingtang calmed herself down and looked at the miserable Luo Zufeng. If she did not guess wrongly, Luo Zufeng was now a good-for-nothing with zero cultivation base after his cultivation base was all absorbed by the heavenly demon devouring bloodline. Yi Qingtang moved her feet and walked straight towards Luo Zufeng. She could not defeat Luo Zufeng at all previously, but now, Luo Zufeng was completely unaware that this happened because of Yi Qingtang's devouring bloodline and merely thought that this Holy Lord of Shadows was so formidable that she actually also grasped such techniques to absorb the cultivation base of others. As he, who had lost all cultivation base, watched Yi Qingtang inch closer, his face turned increasingly pale. Holy Lord of Shadows, you actually also. Luo Qufeng's expression changed drastically and was about to mention that Yi Qingtang also knew techniques to absorb cultivation bases. But Yi Qingtang would not give him the chance to speak now. Before Luo Zufeng could speak finish, a black flame appeared in Yi Qingtang's hands suddenly, and it flew towards the ghastly Luo Zufeng with the slight flick of her finger. Before Luo Zufeng could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by the excruciating burn from the blazing flame. The moment the flame touched his clothes, it spread all over his body like a wildfire. In the dark night, Luo Zufeng was engulfed by the black flame as cries of misery escaped his mouth non-stop. The silent night seemed extremely eerie and terrifying. No one knew that Luo Zufeng had already lost his cultivation base and only saw that Luo Zufeng was unable to retaliate against Yi Qingtang's casual attack using a black flame. This sight drew much astonishment at Yi Qingtang's unfathomable powers. Yi Qingtang stood at his side expressionlessly in a detached manner. Unbeknownst to all, her heart had leaped to her throat just a moment ago. Had Luo Zufeng not lost his cultivation base, she would definitely not attack Luo Zufeng no matter how bold she was. But now, torturing someone without any cultivation base was an easy feat. The Luo family members watched the sight in disbelief. Why did it become like this? Luo Qi watched with wide eyes as Luo Zufeng was engulfed by the black flame. Chapter 1265, To try to gain an advantage only to end up worse off. 3. The Luo family members had absolute faith in Luo Qufeng's skills, and with his technique to absorb cultivation base, they were very certain that the plot today would succeed and that the Luo family was going to ascend to a superior position in the central mainland. But no one would have expected things would turn out this way. Luo Feng's expression was extremely ugly at this point. He never thought that Luo Zufeng would be defeated, but now, Luo Zufeng was clearly not Yi Qingtang's opponent, and if Luo Zufeng was defeated, the Luo family would be in trouble. The guests present today were from various influential forces, and they probably would not let the Luo family off easily in the future. Go! Luo Feng gritted his teeth silently. Luo Qi was slightly dumbfounded, but he realized the current situation very quickly. Then, the senior members of the Luo family hurriedly escaped without a sound just as everyone's gaze was focused on Luo Zufeng and Yi Qingtang. Luo Zufeng screamed non-stop in the entrapment of the black flame. If it was in the past, Yi Qingtang's black flame would not be able to harm him at all, but now, he was merely a useless person without any cultivation base. In no time, Luo Qufeng's shrills faded from everyone's ears, and only a burnt, charred corpse was left in the blazing flame. Luo Qufeng's scheme was destroyed eventually. Everyone gasped as they looked at the burnt corpse. Thank you, Holy Lord of Shadows. We will never forget your grace, Holy Lord. The guests finally sighed in relief and hurriedly rushed forward to thank Yi Qingtang. They never expected Luo Qufeng's skills to be so powerful. Had Yi Qingtang not made a move, all of them would probably lose their lives here. With a faint smile, Yi Qingtang swept a look across everyone without saying anything. If not for the Holy Lord of Shadows' image, she would already have dragged this group of people who hid behind her out and gave them a beating. If the heavenly demon devouring bloodline was not stimulated, she would definitely be dead just now. Thank you for stepping up to help us today, Senior. Hong Zhong immediately thanked Yi Qingtang respectfully after keeping his life with a stroke of luck. Senior, your skills are indeed no less than before. Hong and I admire you a lot. It is all thanks to you today. If I can be of help in any areas in the future, Suamu, am willing to be at your service. Suamu stepped forward to express his gratitude first. It must be known that if Luo Zufeng did not court death by finding trouble for Yi Qingtang, he and Hong Zhong would have had their cultivation base sucked away completely. If the cultivation base that they obtained after thousands of years of cultivation was lost, that feeling would be more terrible than death. Yi Qingtang could not help but feel rather amused when she watched the two renowned figures of the central mainland thank her. Everyone, the Luo family members took the opportunity to escape when we were not paying attention just now. Someone who wanted to come after the Luo family after Luo Zufeng died realized suddenly. The senior members of the Luo family had already fled away without a trace, and only the small fries who did not really understand today's situation were left behind. Do they think that it is over once they run away? How can today's incident be over so easily? The people were still in a state of shock over everything today. Now that they emerged safely out of danger, they naturally resented the entire Luo family to the core. Unable to find anyone to vent their anger, the masses simply set fire to the Luo residence. It was only after watching the tall and lofty pavilions burn in flames did the flames in their heart quell slightly. Chapter 1266, Walking on Thin Ice. 1. Thank you for stopping the Luo family's devious scheme today, Holy Lord. Everyone thanked Yi Qingtang repeatedly. Yi Qingtang put on a calm and composed front and wore a faint smile. Her attitude was like that of a superior person. It's just a small matter. A matter where she almost lost her life. Everyone was overwhelmed with emotion at Yi Qingtang's composure and only left after thanking her repeatedly. Yi Qingtang smiled sweetly as she watched the powerful figures leave. She was really about to be drained from exhaustion. It was truly a frightful night. If possible, Yi Qingtang would have taken this opportunity to slip off. However, the Temple of Shadows Hall Master and others were still standing behind her. Holy Lord, do we return to the temple? The Hall Master asked. No. Yes. Yi Qingtang held the tears in her eyes and forced out a happy smile. Then, Yi Qingtang and the rest returned to the Temple of Shadows immediately. Soon after they left, many Luo family members appeared at the peak of a mountain behind the Luo residence, and their moods were extremely low as they watched the blazing fire not far away. A tall figure suddenly appeared in the sky and landed before them. What happened? A low shout suddenly escaped from that person's mouth. The Luo family members looked up immediately and saw a handsome middle-aged man standing before them with a frown. Luo Feng and Luo Qi's eyes brightened with just one look. Third brother. The man who suddenly appeared in the sky was none other than Luo Feng and Luo Qi's younger brother, the third hand of the Luo family, Luo Yuan. Third brother, you're finally back. It would have been great if you came back earlier. Today, Luo Qi's repressed emotions erupted immediately once he saw Luo Qi. What happened exactly? Haven't you all already made all the preparations for great-grandfather's birthday banquet today? Luo Yuan had an ugly expression and frowned as he looked at the Luo residence that had been engulfed in flames. Luo Qi immediately recounted the whole incident to Luo Yuan. After he listened for a while, a powerful aura rushed into the sky, and the mountain behind him was flattened to a field immediately in just a moment. Even the ground that the Luo family members were stepping on began to tremble. Luo Qi and Luo Feng were slightly startled as they watched the enraged Luo Yuan. Luo Yuan seemed to be even more powerful than before, and his aura was even stronger than Luo Qufeng's. Everyone in the Luo family only knew that the Grand Elder, Luo Zufeng, was very skilled, but people did not know that the true talent of the Luo family was Luo Yuan. Luo Yuan was extremely gifted since young, and even Luo Qufeng's endowment was inferior to Luo Yuan's. Luo Zufeng has always had high expectations for Luo Yuan and trained him attentively. Under Luo Qufeng's arrangements, Luo Yuan left the Luo family a long time ago to cultivate, and his skills soared tremendously, not to the disappointment of the Luo family and Luo Zufeng. Holy Lord of Shadows. Luo Yuan calmed his anger, but his eyes were extremely cold as he watched the blaze before him. Big brother, second brother, don't worry. I, Luo Yuan, will definitely avenge the Luo family. Luo Yuan's voice was sonorous and forceful. Right when he finished his sentence, he unsheathed his sword abruptly and swept across at the air, causing an enormous wave-like gush of air to extinguish the endless fire that engulfed the already burnt Luo residence. Chapter 1267, Walking on Thin Ice. 2. Once Yi Qingtang returned to the Temple of Shadows, she headed back to her own living quarters. The number of frights that she suffered from the 2 days of being in the Temple of Shadows was more than what she experienced in the past few years. It felt like walking on thin ice, like her life was hanging on a bare thread. After Yi Qingtang returned to her living quarters, the hall master who went to the Luo residence with Yi Qingtang went to meet Ming Wang. Ming Wang was discussing some matters with a few tribe leaders and immediately called the hall master in for a report after hearing that the hall master was back. "Is the Holy Lord back?" Ming Wang asked in a low voice without looking up. "Yes," replied the hall master. Ming Wang looked up slightly and took a look at the hall master expressionlessly. The Luo residents must have been rather lively today. The demon tribe leader from a side heard a hidden meaning in Ming Wang's words and asked immediately, "Ming Wang, do you know something about the Luo family's birthday banquet? Otherwise, given your personality, why would you let the Holy Lord go there?" Just based on the Luo family's skills itself, the Luo family did not deserve their Holy Lord to head there personally. Ming Wang's eyes had an aloof expression. Luo Zhufeng obtained a fragmented scroll of a cultivation technique previously and has been secretly cultivating it over the past years. This cultivation technique can absorb other people's cultivation base and use it themselves. He has been cultivating it for thousands of years, and it should be about done. The birthday celebration this year was publicized so widely, and it should be because they conspired something. How would the Luo residents not be lively then? The tribe leaders immediately understood Ming Wang's intentions after what Ming Wang said. "You knew it long ago. So, you sent the Holy Lord there intentionally to use this opportunity to test her identity?" Ming Wang's expression was the same as before. "I knew it long ago. What do I know? I am not a member of the Luo family and have no interest in what they want to do." Although that was what Ming Wang said, the tribe leaders present were not fools and naturally understood what Ming Wang meant. Were there any interesting incidents during the birthday celebration? Ming Wang turned to look at the hall master and asked. The hall master immediately narrated the events to Ming Wang in full detail. There was a subtle change in Ming Wang's expression. "You said that Luo Qufeng's cultivation base was absorbed by the Holy Lord's heavenly demon-devouring bloodline?" "Yes." The hall master nodded and said subsequently. "But according to my observation, it was not the Holy Lord who actively absorbed it, and it seemed more like the heavenly demon-devouring bloodline automatically absorbed Luo Qufeng's powers. She did not absorb it actively." Tilting his head slightly, Ming Wang supported his head with one hand while gently tapping a chair with the other. "I got it. You can leave first." Noted. The hall master received his order and retreated immediately. The moment the hall master left, the other tribe leaders spoke. "Ming Wang, although the Holy Lord has not really displayed her skills before us, we cannot be certain that she really possesses the heavenly demon-devouring bloodline. However, it is indeed fishy that the heavenly demon-devouring bloodline passively absorbed the cultivation base of others. Given the Holy Lord's skills, why is there a need for this? Furthermore, it was not instructed by her either." The tribe leaders grew increasingly suspicious. Although that human did not tamper with the Nine Souls ring, it does not say much either, as she could have tempered with it herself if she intended to. The goblin tribal leader commented subsequently. The more they observed the Holy Lord, the more suspicious they became. However, her actions were extremely similar to that of the Holy Lord's, and they could not distinguish the difference at a moment. "If anyone has any thoughts, you may just say it," Ming Wang said immediately. "We don't have many thoughts, but our objective is the same. No one can impersonate the Holy Lord, and anyone who dares to do so will be a sinner for eternity," the demon tribe leader said coldly. Ming Wang narrowed his eyes slightly. His pitch-black eyes were filled with an eerie iciness. "Of course, if anyone impersonates the Holy Lord, I will let them know what the cruelest torture in this world tastes like. This promise of yours is sufficient." The few tribe leaders exchanged a look and made a decision in their hearts immediately. Chapter 1268, Walking on Thin Ice, 3, Yi Qingtang collapsed on the soft bed in her living quarters. The little white tiger took a peek at Yi Qingtang and knew that the birthday banquet tonight was not simple. This is still the beginning. If you don't leave the Temple of Shadows, you will suffer more in the future. Today's birthday banquet is most likely to test you, and there will be many more such incidents in the future. With these skills of yours, you might very well be exposed one day, said the little white tiger. Do you think I don't wish to go? I can't even go. Yi Qingtang's headache intensified. Other people were envious of the Holy Lord of Shadow's reputation and position, but anyone apart from the true owner of the position would go berserk if they were at the position. Not mentioning how many enemies the Holy Lord of Shadows had outside, the suspicions that the internal members of the Temple of Shadows had over her identity were already extremely life-threatening. Just as the little white tiger and Yi Qingtang were talking, the door to her room was suddenly opened. Startled, Yi Qingtang hurriedly sat up and suddenly saw, a tiny figure was hiding behind the door quietly, and he poked half his head out to look at her cautiously. Minggu. Yi Qingtang's heart reached her throat when she saw the little fellow hiding behind the door. She did not know whether Minggu heard her conversation with the little white tiger. Ah Yao. Can I come in? Seeing that he was discovered, Minggu immediately moved his tiny legs and kept his hands behind him while looking at Yi Qingtang pitifully. Looking at Minggu's reaction, Yi Qingtang reckoned that he did not hear the conversation and was slightly relieved. She then put on a doting expression and smiled. Why? You have not seen me for half a day, but you miss me so much already. There was a slight hint of shyness on Minggu's ash face. He lowered his head rather awkwardly, and he swayed his body. Of course I miss you, but I know that you hate those so-called banquets and that you have never liked human food. I thought that you must not have eaten much today, so I specially brought something for you. Just looking at Minggu's shy behavior and leaving aside his identity as the Temple of Shadow's holy son and the current situation, Yi Qingtang's heart was about to melt. Minggu always reminded her of little Yu Yun whom the ancient Yu clan stole away. Little Yu Yun was also very shy and adorable like this then. Without control, Yi Qingtang's smile became more natural, and her voice had a sincere teasing tone. What delicacy did you bring? Let me see. Minggu's eyes brightened slightly, and he broke out into a bright smile. He immediately stretched out his tiny hands that he kept behind him. In his tiny hands was a black worm that was a whole ring bigger than his hands. Its round body wriggled around and gave off a rotten, decomposed smell. With just a look, Yi Qingtang almost vomited. Ah Yao, this is a black flame worm that I just caught today. I know that you like to eat this the most. Quickly eat it while it's hot. It is still well and alive now. Ming Wang wanted to eat it, but I could not even bear to give it to him. Minggu did not even realize that Yi Qingtang's lips were twisted, and he blinked his wide eyes as though he was offering a treasure. The undead clan would not age nor die, and eating was not to sustain their life but to fulfill the stomach's desires. Moreover, they had an extremely unique taste for food and usually consumed special species of dead creatures. The black flame worm was one of the best delicacies in the eyes of the undead clan. Chapter 1269, Unable to Enjoy. 1. Black flame worms were not considered rare in the central mainland, but after the undead clan came to the central mainland, the black flame worm became extremely scarce over time. Currently, a black flame worm could be said to be priceless and hard to come by to the undead clan. It was exactly because of this fact that Minggu would present this precious treasure to Yi Qingtang. However, Yi Qingtang's stomach churned as she looked at that black, fleshy worm. How could she forget the undead clan's exquisite taste, Yao? Minggu's pitch-dark orbs seemed to be filled with countless stars that sparkled brilliantly as he looked at Yi Qingtang expectantly like a little puppy waiting to be praised. Yi Qingtang tried her best to keep the smile on her face though she was losing it on the inside. Seeing this sight, the little white tiger turned its back extremely disloyally and muffled a snicker with its paws. Ah Yao, although this black flame worm is not as juicy as those you ate before, it still tastes pretty nice. Are you dissatisfied that it is not big enough? The light in Minggu's eyes gradually faded when he saw that Yi Qingtang had not eaten it after some time. Was this not big enough? Looking at the black flame worm that was several inches bigger than a roasted suckling pig, Yi Qingtang was more than speechless. Exactly what kind of taste did the Holy Lord of Shadows have that she could actually eat such a thing? I am just very touched. Yi Qingtang summoned her might to suppress the urge to gag, and she beamed at Minggu. There are not many black flame worms now, but you still took the trouble to find it for me. Hearing that, Minggu's eyes lit up instantly, and he smiled adorably. As long as it's something that you like, I will find it for you. Seeming to have thought something, Minggu placed the black flame worm on the ground, took out a necklace that was chained with golden skulls, and presented it to Yi Qingtang. Ah Yao, this is a necklace that I chained for you. I am giving it to you. Minggu placed the necklace before Yi Qingtang bashfully. Yi Qingtang experienced complicated feelings when she saw that accessory which was chained up using golden painted skulls. How exactly was she going to accept the undead clan's sense of aesthetics? However, compared to eating worms, this necklace had greater acceptability to Yi Qingtang. As long as it was not eating worms, she was willing to do anything else. Yi Qingtang received the necklace and wore it, causing Minggu to smile even brighter. At the same time, Yi Qingtang saw that black flame worm with a strong will to live was attempting to wriggle away, and a wave of relief washed over her. However, a loud bang was heard. A black light flashed across from Minggu's hand and immediately struck the route that the black flame worm was heading toward. The black flame worm, startled by the loud sound, rolled on the ground, and its fleshy body trembled. It almost ran away. Minggu ran toward the black flame worm, picked it up, and placed it before Yi Qingtang. His large, sparkling eyes were filled with expectancy as he looked at Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang's lips twitched a little. Was she unable to avoid this today? Currently, only a handful of the undead clan fully believed her identity as the Holy Lord of Shadows without a doubt, and one of them was Minggu. If she caused Minggu to have any suspicions, Yi Qingtang took a deep breath secretly and smiled. Let's eat it together. Wasn't it just eating a worm? So be it. Minggu looked as though he was overwhelmed by an unexpected favor. Without waiting for Yi Qingtang to say anything else, he immediately carried a stool over, slammed the black flame worm on the table, and sat in his seat obediently. Chapter 1270, Unable to Enjoy, 2, Yi Qingtang had a breakdown on the inside but dared not show it. She even had the thought of dying as she looked at the plump, succulent black flame worm. How exactly should this be eaten? Should she put it into her mouth directly? Looking at that fleshy black flame worm that was still wriggling about, Yi Qingtang felt that she was still not mentally strong enough to reach that stage. She could not eat it. Minggu did not sense Yi Qingtang's internal breakdown and obediently took out a dagger. Afterward, he sliced a piece of the black flame worm's gray flesh and handed it to Yi Qingtang. Taking a look at the worm flesh that was still dripping with pus and then at the black flame worm, which was trembling from the pain, Yi Qingtang's heart was in crumbles. What the heck? It's really eaten raw. Let's eat it together. Holding back the urge to puke, Yi Qingtang took the worm flesh, mustered her courage, and took a bite. Fluid exploded in her mouth instantly with a bite. The disgusting taste of the carrion-like flesh rushed throughout her body. God knows how much energy Yi Qingtang exerted to stop herself from puking. In contrast, Minggu dug in blissfully after seeing that Yi Qingtang took a bite. Humans and the undead clan had a world of differences in their taste for food. As Yi Qingtang ate miserably, she realized that the heartless little white tiger was actually back-facing her and trembling continuously. Don't think that she doesn't know it is suppressing its laughter. With the thought of all for one for all, Yi Qingtang pulled the little white tiger over and stuffed a half-eaten piece of flesh into its mouth before it could react. In just a moment, the little white tiger that had been gloating over her misfortune immediately rolled its eyes. Does it still dare to be cocky? Seeing that Yu Qingtang shared such a precious black flame worm with that darn white tiger, Minggu's eyes turned murderous. The little white tiger was almost disgusted to death, yet it noticed that Minggu was glaring at it as though it wanted to devour it. Fuck you. It's not like I ate it willingly. Ah Yao, is it tasty? Minggu looked at Yu Qingtang obediently while secretly swearing to find a chance to kill this little white tiger that was fighting for her favor with him. How can something that you searched so hard for not be tasty? Yu Qingtang smiled affectionately even though she was crying on the inside. Since it's tasty, you should eat more. As though he was greatly encouraged, Minggu could not even be bothered with eating and hurriedly began slicing pieces of worm flesh for Yu Qingtang. That fleshy black flame worm was cut into many pieces and was killed in the blink of an eye. As Yu Qingtang pitied the black flame worm, she pitied herself too. When will this be over? Just by looking at Yu Qingtang eat, Minggu was extremely content and specially slowed down his eating pace so as to leave more for Yu Qingtang. Ah Yao, how much longer are you going to stay like this? Minggu asked suddenly. Yu Qingtang was slightly taken aback. However, Minggu looked up, propped his chin on his hands, and watched Yu Qingtang eat the worm flesh. Ah Yao, previously, you said that it is easier for us to move around with a human appearance, but... Ah Yao, humans are really too hideous. Ah Yao, you're clearly so beautiful. Why must you force yourself to have this hideous look? Minggu puckered his lips as regret filled his face. Hi, Dias. Yu Qingtang stared blankly. Chapter 1271, Unable to Enjoy, 3. Although Yu Qingtang did not care for looks, her face could be considered to be the standard of great beauty among humans. Why did it become hideous when Minggu spoke about it? Ah Yao, will you change back? You're clearly so beautiful. With a sincere look, Minggu specially took out a scroll and opened it before Yu Qingtang. The scroll revealed a drawing of a grey skeleton frame. While it was donned in an elegant dress and had a golden crown on its head, it was remarkably similar to a skeleton. Ah Yao, look how beautiful you were last time. You were the top beauty of our skeleton tribe back then. But look at you now. Why must you do this to yourself? An expression of despair was etched all over Minggu's face as though Yu Qingtang's look on the Holy Lord of Shadows was the biggest humiliation. Yu Qingtang was silent. The undead clan's taste was mostly similar to any other species. In the eyes of the skeleton tribe, the skeleton form was naturally the most beautiful. In their eyes, the slender skeleton frame and pitch-black eye sockets were deemed as beautiful. In contrast, a whole body of skin that covered the skeleton frame was nothing but hideous. Thus, had she always been too hideous to look to the undead clan? Yu Qingtang felt that she was about to turn numb from the verbal attack. Ah Yao, we are in the temple now anyways. Will you return to your original look? Minggu tried his best to persuade Yu Qingtang to return to being the most beautiful woman of the skeleton tribe. Yu Qingtang smiled lovingly but did not reply. She could not do it. She finally saw that while Minggu was fully convinced of her identity, this posed a huge problem as well. It was exactly because he trusted her so much that he treated her with the rules of the undead clan, causing Yu Qingtang, a human, to have an eye-opener. Minggu still planned to persuade Yu Qingtang to be herself, but Xue Fu suddenly came over and said that Ming Wang was looking for him. Upon hearing that, Minggu could only look at Yu Qingtang reluctantly and leave very unwillingly. After leaving the sleeping chamber, Minggu spoke to Xue Fu. Xue Fu, bring those flower pots of mine to Ah Yao later. Ah Yao loves them the most. A gasp of laughter escaped Xue Fu's lips as he looked at Minggu, who prioritized Yu Qingtang for everything. You raised those flowers for thousands of years. You must have been waiting for this moment, right? Minggu nodded his head and said, before Ah Yao left back then, I accidentally broke a few flower pots, and I thought of growing better ones to compensate her. This wait turned out to be thousands of years. Xue Fu shook his head in laughter and subsequently sent those few flower pots that Minggu mentioned to Yi Qingtang's sleeping chambers. Yi Qingtang immediately plunged into deep thought as she looked at the few pots of flowers that Xue Fu sent in. In those flower pots, the flower stalks bent their alluring bodies of which bloody skulls were hanging from. Skull flower. Using a fresh human skull as the foundation, the newly sprouted blood vine was then to be buried into the skull. Once the blood vine grew, it would be nourished with the flesh and grow gradually. Minggu knows that you love the skull flower the most and has raised these few pots of flowers for thousands of years. He hopes that you like it, Xue Fu said with a smile. Like it, I really love it to death. Whoever it be, hurry up and get me out of this temple of shadows. Who the hell wants to have bloody skulls that wobble non-stop staring at themselves when they are sleeping? How exquisite are the tastes of the Holy Lord of Shadows exactly. Chapter 1272, Let Me Go Free. 1. Brother, are you looking for me? Minggu walked into Ming Wang's room and asked. Ming Wang's room was dim and ghastly. Michum. Ming Wang was examining some scrolls at a desk and did not even bat an eye when he responded. While they were twins, Minggu had an inexplicable fear toward Ming Wang. You brought the black flame worm over? Ming Wang asked coldly without looking up. Yeah, I brought it over. Minggu looked at Ming Wang and said, Brother, it's rare for Ayao to be back. She loves the black flame worm the most. If you wish to eat it, I will bring it to you next time. Shut up. Ming Wang suddenly looked up with a frown as he shot the innocent Minggu a cold look. It's been so many years already. Why do you still have so much crap to say? Did I ask you so many things? Ming Wang's voice was so cold that the air could freeze. Minggu trembled and pursed his lips, aggrieved. It had been so many years, but no matter what he did, his brother was always dissatisfied. Ming Wang frowned at Minggu with a hint of impatience. Make preparations for a trip to the Eternal Dynasty 2 days later, Ming Wang said coldly. I'm not going. Minggu said instinctively. Ming Wang's face turned cold immediately. However, Minggu repressed his fear and said, Yao just returned. I want to stay with her. I am not going to the Eternal Dynasty. Fool, Ming Wang narrowed his eyes, but he widened it again soon after. There are some issues with our cooperation with the Eternal Dynasty. I am occupied with something and can't leave for the moment. You are not the only one going, as the Holy Lord is going too. What else do you have to say? Ming Gu's eyes lit up immediately upon hearing that. Yao is going too. I do not wish to repeat the same thing twice, Ming Wang said coldly. Minggu could not even be bothered with Ming Wang's cold attitude then. At the thought that he could interact with Yi Qingtang for a long period of time, he agreed immediately. I'll go, get lost then, Ming Wang said impatiently when he saw Minggu's reaction. Unconcerned, Minggu left in smiles. He could go on a trip with Aya already. Although Minggu left the room, Ming Wang's furrowed brows never relaxed. Lady Ghost. A slender figure slowly emerged from the darkness. I'm present. Do you have any orders, Holy Son? Bring a few hall masters along with Minggu 2 days later. You should be clear of what to do. Ming Wang looked at Lady Ghost and said. I understand. Lady Ghost smiled and nodded. The Holy Lord's identity is still uncertain as of now, and it is inconvenient for us to do anything although we suspect her. The third prince of the Eternal Dynasty, Ling Yan, has a demon-like intelligence, and he should be able to tell whether the Holy Lord is real or not. Ming Wang nodded in satisfaction. Lady Ghost said subsequently, It's just that, there's something I don't understand. Speak, Ming Wang said. Lady Ghost said, Holy Son Minggu firmly believes the Holy Lord's identity and is extremely protective of the Holy Lord right now. Why do you want to bring Holy Son Minggu along on this trip? Even an idiot could tell that Minggu supported Yi Qingtang fully and even had no suspicions of Yi Qingtang's identity. Ming Wang sneered. It's exactly because Minggu firmly believes her that I want Minggu to follow them. I am slow-witted. Ming Wang said, you all can clearly see Minggu's attitude, and so can she. If she is an impersonator, she will definitely be on her guard. However, if Minggu, who trusts her fully, is beside her, there is a possibility that she will lower her guard. Chapter 1273, Let Me Go Free. 2. Being alert around her will only result in her raising her guards against us, and we will not be able to find out any suspicious things about her. However, if she relaxes a little, she will definitely give something away. Lady Ghost immediately understood Ming Wang's intentions after hearing what he said. You are wise. You may leave, Ming Wang said. Lady Ghost disappeared into the darkness subsequently. Once there was no one in the room, Ming Wang stood up slowly and opened a secret compartment. In it was a lifelike portrait of a half-skeleton, half-human figure who was none other than the Holy Lord of Shadows. Ah Yao, looking at that portrait that he had kept for a long time, he frowned in misery. Yi Qingtang enjoyed a rare idol in the Temple of Shadows in the next 2 days. She was extremely thankful for the current rarity of the Black Flame Worm. Otherwise, given Minggu's character, he would send some over daily. She never wanted to touch that thing for the second time in this life. Perhaps it was her misperception, but she felt that Minggu was in high spirits these 2 days. But before she figured out why Minggu was suddenly in such a good mood, she received a shocking piece of news. Eternal Dynasty. Yi Qingtang was seated on the black bone throne as she put on a reserved front that concealed her internal surprise. The cooperation with the Eternal Dynasty back then was your intention. Although you disappeared for thousands of years, the cooperation is still continuing to date. However, something happened at Eternal Dynasty's side presently, thus, we can only request you to take a look there, Ming Wang said expressionlessly, though his black orbs observed Yi Qingtang's each and every movement. Yi Qingtang's face was emotionless, but she was overwhelmed with a mix of emotions on the inside. Eternal Dynasty. Wasn't that Ling Yan's territory? Go. She would definitely go. What happened? While Yi Qingtang really wished to leave this hell of a Temple of Shadows immediately, she still had to feign a calm front. It is still unclear. Thus, we need you to go there to take a look. Ming Wang answered flawlessly. Minggu and Lady Ghost will go on this trip with you. They will bring you to meet with Eternal Dynasty's third prince, Ling Yan / Ming Wang added. Bring her to meet Ling Yan? Yi Qingtang was excited, but she faintly felt that things were not that simple. Although the Temple of Shadows did not test her further over the past few days, she was very clear that they would not believe her identity so easily. Logically speaking, the test would not stop. However, Ming Wang suddenly wanted her to go to the Eternal Dynasty and interact with Ling Yan. Yi Qingtang was not a fool, and she could easily guess Ming Wang's intentions after deliberating about it carefully. Most likely, Ming Wang wished to use the highly intelligent Ling Yan to test her identity. Yi Qingtang really wanted to applaud Ming Wang's wit. Good job. Holy Sun Ming Wang. I got it. When do we set off? Yi Qingtang asked while keeping her composure. The preparations are all made. You may set off any time. Ming Wang replied. There were indeed preparations from the start. It was no wonder Minggu was so spirited these few days. Yi Qingtang kept a faint smile on her face, though she was extremely elated that she was about to leave the Temple of Shadows. Once she headed to the Eternal Dynasty, with Ling Yan on her side, perhaps she could find the chance to escape the damn Temple of Shadows. Yi Qingtang was on cloud 9 just at the thought of it. Very quickly, Yi Qingtang, Minggu, and Lady Ghost, along with a group of undead clan, set off for the Eternal Dynasty. Naturally, Yi Qingtang brought the little white tiger along with her as well. Chapter 1274, Let Me Go Free. 3. The Eternal Dynasty was thousands of miles away from the Temple of Shadows. Yi Qingtang sat in a gray bone sedan. She finally relaxed when she saw the Temple of Shadows disappear into the distance. Don't rejoice too early. Don't you see that Ming Wang has sent Lady Ghost with us? And those branch masters are no weaklings. If you're not careful, you might expose yourself and die without even reaching the Eternal Dynasty. The little white tiger poured cold water on Yi Qingtang when it saw the smile in her eyes. Yi Qingtang's good mood was immediately dampened. Of course, she knew all that. Every day she failed to escape was another day with the sword of the Temple of Shadows suspended over her head. They could pick anyone from the undead clan, and they could kill her. Yi Qingtang was very careful during the journey. The undead did not need to sleep, drink, or eat, so they seldom stopped to rest. After traveling for a few days, they were more than halfway there. The group from the Temple of Shadows stopped and rested for a while. Ah Yao, shall we look around? Ming Gu took the opportunity to sneak into Yi Qingtang's sedan and asked her hopefully. Yi Qingtang was unable to refuse when she looked at the puppy-like face. She would also take the opportunity to stretch her limbs. Heaven knew her bones were shattered from squatting in that bone sedan all day. The group from the Temple of Shadows had stopped at the foot of a tall mountain. Now and then, thunderous explosions could be heard from the top of the mountain, and debris also fell from it. The ghost lady walked over and said smilingly, "Is the Holy Sun Minggu and the Holy Lord going over there?" Minggu said, "Ah Yao and I will look around, the rest of you can stay here and rest." Lady Ghost laughed and said, "I was just feeling bored. Why don't I go with you?" Minggu pouted and looked somewhat reluctant. However, Lady Ghost was Ming Wang's trusted subordinate, so he did not dare to say anything. He only lifted his eyes to look pleadingly at Yi Qingtang. Of course, Yi Qingtang knew why Lady Ghost wanted to follow them, but she did not mind, so she nodded. Lady Ghost followed them smilingly. It was nearing evening, and the mountain was littered with huge boulders. The occasional explosions hurt their eardrums. Yi Qingtang, Lady Ghost, and Minggu walked for a while before they saw a few shabby figures on the desolate mountainside. They looked emaciated and skinny. Their appearance was rather odd, their skin was gray without the slightest hint of color. They only wore some shabby clothes. Their eyes were hollow, and their legs were heavily shackled. They were barefoot and were pulling a cart of ore with some difficulty. The undead clan, with one glance, Yi Qingtang could tell that these drab-looking figures were part of the undead clan. However, these undead were pitiable compared to the undead clan in the Temple of Shadows. A harsh-looking foreman stood nearby. His back was bare, and he held a metal whip that he cracked from time to time, viciously whipping the undead with a clear cracking noise. A bunch of lazy bones. If you don't drag 50 carts of ore today, I will flay you. The foreman shouted as he brutally whipped a skinny undead. The force of the metal whip was so great that the bones of the undead seemed like they were about to break at any moment. The undead's face twisted in pain. It looked as if it was still quite young. Chapter 1275, Slaves. 1. Despicable worm, how dare you be rude to us undead. The moment Minggu saw this scene, a murderous look surfaced on his face. Lady Ghost, who was standing nearby, maintained her composure, but she glanced at Yi Qingtang from the corner of her eye and spoke. Holy Sun Minggu has not left the Temple of Shadows for thousands of years. It is natural that he doesn't understand the current situation in Central Mainland. Things like that have long become common in Central Mainland. Minggu frowned slightly. Lady Ghost continued. Ever since the Holy Lord went missing thousands of years ago, the power of our Temple of Shadows has waned. The circumstances of the various undead clans in Central Mainland have also changed completely. The undead clan was not native to Central Mainland. It was only when the Holy Lord of Shadows and the tribe leaders of the undead clans had come to Central Mainland that many undead moved here from the second domain and settled down. When the Temple of Shadows was at the height of its powers, the undead had smoothly settled into life in this mainland. The natives did not dare to offend the undead because of the power of the Temple of Shadows. However, when the Holy Lord of Shadows went missing and the Temple of Shadows declined, the situation changed. Shortly after the Holy Lord of Shadows disappeared, the mainland still had some scruples. But as time went by and 1,000 years passed, everyone's fear of the Holy Lord of Shadows and the Temple of Shadows slowly dissipated. With that, the undead clan's position became increasingly precarious. The special characteristics of their race were that they did not need to eat, drink, or sleep. Many thought of them as the cheapest form of labor. 1,000 years ago, people in Central Mainland began to capture the undead that had settled there. They enslaved the undead because of their special characteristics, and the latter became the lowest form of labor. As slaves, the status of the undead was lower than that of anyone else. They did not age or die. Unless they met with some accident or with extenuating circumstances, they could be endlessly oppressed. The mountain that Yi Qing Tang and the others were on was a mine. There were innumerable mine shafts, each filled with undead who worked day and night. But they did not receive any remuneration. They did not even receive the cheapest food and housing that the human slaves did. They were, at most, allowed to rest for a few minutes when they were utterly exhausted. Otherwise, they worked day and night. How dare a smelly worm like you act so audaciously? Ming Gu's face grew stern. Ever since the Holy Lord of Shadows had vanished, he had not left the Temple of Shadows at all. Naturally, he remained ignorant of the changes in this mainland that had taken place over the past thousands of years. In his eyes, humans were weak and ugly like smelly grubs. He would never have imagined that today's circumstances were possible. Holy Son Minggu, don't be angry. The situation you see today is common in Central Mainland. Lady Ghost pacified Minggu, but from the corner of her eye, she continued to pay close attention to Yi Qingtang's every move. Yi Qingtang's emotions were in turmoil as she looked at these abused undead, but she did not show it. When she had come to Central Mainland in her previous life, she had learned a little of the terrible circumstances of the undead here. The undead neither aged nor died. They did not eat or drink. To many, they were the perfect slaves. 1,000 years ago, humans had begun to capture them in large numbers and forced them to work for humans. Chapter 1276, Slaves, 2. Although Yi Qingtang disliked these things, she had been hard-pressed to survive in her previous life, much less bother with other people's troubles. But now, Yi Qingtang vaguely sensed that Lady Ghost was secretly observing her reaction when she talked to Minggu. Yi Qingtang's lips curved in a small smile. Outside the mine, the small undead who was being whipped had broken a bone, and he was writhing on the ground in pain. Lazy bones, you still want to play dead? When the foreman saw this, he did not show any guilt. Instead, he advanced with large strides and stepped on the little undead with an ugly expression on his face. Get up. If you continue to laze around, I will break all your bones. He shouted and berated them. He did not treat them with a shred of dignity, dealing with them like lowly insects. The other undead looked on in terror. They were used to the abuse and the scoldings. Even if they wanted to help, they knew that this would ultimately result in the small undead suffering even more. They had lived happily in Central Mainland for generations. They had not expected that they would one day be relegated to this state. Please, please, don't beat me. It hurts so much. The small undead tried to protect himself in terror. His scrawny frame quivered as he was kicked and punched mercilessly. How dare you talk back? I'll kill you. The foreman did not show any pity. He raised the metal whip in his hand again and fiercely whipped the small undead. There was a huge bang. The metal whip did not land on the small undead's body as expected. The small undead raised his eyes in shock but realized that the foreman who was whipping him had been flung straight into a nearby boulder. A large patch of blood seeped from his mouth and nose. Everyone was stunned. "Damn it, who dared to hit me?" The foreman's whole body was in agony. He forced himself to stand up and suddenly saw the person who had struck him. He saw a beautiful young girl smiling at him. "Who are you? How dare you hit me?" the foreman shouted. All the other foremen in the surrounding mine shafts were summoned by the sound of his yelling. "Where are these undead from? How dare they make trouble in our long family's territory?" The foreman who had hurried over soon realized that something was amiss. The young girl looked quite ordinary, but the child standing behind her, with his completely pitch-black eyes, was emanating an aura of death. The seductive-looking lattice eyes were different from humans, and she was radiating an even more intense death aura. The foreman who had enslaved the undead immediately saw that the child and the seductive-looking woman were undead. At that moment, Lady Ghost and Ming Gu were looking at Yi Qingtang. They had not expected Yi Qingtang to suddenly act. A trace of a smile hung on Yi Qingtang's lips. She looked at the shouting foreman with a cold look in her eyes. "What's going on?" An impatient shout suddenly rang out from a nearby mine shaft. A luxuriously dressed youth with an oily face walked towards the disturbance. When the foremen saw the youth walk over, they immediately went over fawningly. Chapter 1277, Slaves, 3, Young Master, these undead appeared from nowhere and dared to strike us. A foreman hurriedly explained. An impatient look crossed the youth's face when he heard that. He raised his eyes, but what he saw caused a malicious look to instantly flash across his eyes. "What beautiful undead!" The youth glanced at Yi Qingtang and Lady Ghost with an expression of surprise. This youth's name was Long Yang, and he was a cousin of the Long family master. The Long family was a famous family in this mainland. It controlled many mines and had many connections among the dynasties. The Long family had also enslaved many undead. Long Yang had seen many undead before, but this was the first time seeing such beautiful ones. The undead enslaved by the Long family received a jolt when they saw that Long Yang had arrived. A few of the undead who were near Yi Qingtang whispered, "Clansmen, thank you for your help today. But the Long family is not to be trifled with. You'd better leave." The Long family was extremely powerful and had captured many undead. Those who tried to escape were all executed by the Long family. They were grateful to these three clansmen for their help, so they were unwilling to see more of their clansmen suffer at the hands of the Long family. Yi Qingtang looked at the worried undead, and a trace of amusement surfaced in her eyes. Many undead had settled in central mainland. Most of them had led comfortable lives and, like the other inhabitants of the mainland, did not look for trouble. But the special characteristics of their race had caused their suffering. Yi Qingtang did not leave. She only raised her eyes to look at the malicious-looking Long Yang. "You are certainly very bold. Do you know who controls this area? How dare you be so presumptuous?" Long Yang smiled at Yi Qingtang and Lady Ghost with a greedy look in his eyes. "Men, capture these three undead. Put the small one to work. As for the two female undead, send them to my room. I have not had a taste of such beautiful undead." Long Yang smiled sinisterly. At Long Yang's command, the foremen and their henchmen charged at Yi Qingtang and the others. The enslaved undead were shocked and they saw that their clansmen were about to be mistreated. They almost subconsciously blocked the men's way. An elderly undead hurriedly said to Yi Qingtang, "Clansmen, please leave quickly. The Long family is not to be trifled with. If you are caught, there will be no hope of escape." They could not escape, but they also could not look on and see their clansmen, who had helped them, get into trouble. A large group of undead slaves tried to intercept the men from the Long family. However, they were unarmed and only succeeded in bringing on a whipping. Tragic screams rang out. Yi Qingtang's eyes immediately turned icy. These humans in central mainland all looked down on the undead clan. They thought that the undead clan was cruel and cold-blooded, but they did not see that the ties between the undead and their clansmen were no less than that of the other races. Minggu, Yi Qingtang said softly while remaining expressionless. The moment Yi Qingtang spoke, Minggu, who was already feeling fed up, immediately transformed into a black shadow. Chapter 1278, Shock. 1. No one saw what happened, they only sensed an aura of death encircling them. The foremen who had been brandishing their metal whips and beating the undead only saw a black blur. They collapsed to the ground before they knew what was happening. The bodies on the ground were all sucked dry of their blood. Their bones were wrapped in dried and cracked skin while their eyes bulged out in death. The blood from these smelly grubs is really nauseating. Minggu's figure suddenly appeared before the undead. The sharp nails on his small white hands were covered with fresh blood that dripped around his feet. You despicable grubs, how dare you be discourteous to Yao, you really deserve to die. Minggu's usually innocent and smiling visage had completely disappeared and was replaced with the bone-chilling murderous air similar to that of Ming Wang. Everyone from the Long family was stunned when the small undead suddenly struck. They stared in shock at the dozens of bloodless corpses that littered the ground. Dozens of men had been killed by this small undead in the blink of an eye. A trace of shock involuntarily surfaced on Long Yang's face, but he quickly recovered. I've changed my mind. Little undead, you're rather special. Don't worry, I won't leave you in the mines. I'll bring you to the arenas instead. You will certainly make a lot of money for me. Long Yang narrowed his eyes that were filled with greed. Long Yang ordered the guards behind him to charge forward and capture Minggu. Minggu watched coldly as they rushed towards him. His eyes were filled with contempt. He did not move, but a towering aura of death rushed out from him. The aura of death seemed to cover the entire mountain. The charging Long family guards were shrouded by the aura. It was as if they were suddenly gripped by some force. Their faces rapidly turned pale, and they fell, writhing, to the ground. It was as if someone was slowly draining the blood from their bodies, which flowed in front of Minggu and transformed into a crimson ball of blood. Yi Qingtang felt very conflicted by the scene playing out before her eyes. Yi Qingtang was hard-pressed to reconcile this murderous little fellow with the small, adorable creature who followed her everywhere, calling her, Yao. She could only say, the Long family was truly unlucky. They actually wanted to capture Minggu and bring him to some arena. Wasn't that a death wish? Yi Qingtang inwardly mourned for the Long family, but she continued to smile faintly. Long Yang had not expected this tiny undead to be so powerful. His subordinates could not even touch the corner of his robe. The undead were also shocked. They widened their eyes and looked at the powerful Minggu. A faint ray of hope appeared in their desperate eyes. In the blink of an eye, all the guards were dead. Like the foreman, they had been transformed into bloodless corpses. At that moment, Long Yang was rather pale. He had assumed that he could easily capture these three undead, but he had not expected things to reach this state. You, who are you? Long Yang looked at Minggu, who had sucked all the guards dry. He felt a chill permeate his body. Chapter 1279, Shock. 2. Minggu had no intention of paying any attention to him. A smelly grub like that was not worth talking to. Long Yang's legs started to shake when he saw Minggu walk towards him. How dare you? This is the Long family's territory. I don't care who you are, but if you dare to offend the Long family, we will ensure that you die a terrible death in the future. Long family? Ming-gu cocked his head with a meditative look on his face. He had not left the Temple of Shadows for thousands of years. He had not even heard of the Long family. Lady Ghost, who was standing behind Yi Qingtang, smiled and said, "Holy Son Ming-gu, the Long family is one of the great families in Central Mainland." Great family? What's that? Is it something like the ancient Yu clan? Ming-gu asked somewhat impatiently. Long Yang's expression stiffened at Ming-gu's words. The ancient Yu clan, that was the supreme great family in Central Mainland. Lady Ghost laughed and shook her head. Then is it like the Jiang family? Ming-gu asked again. Long Yang was ashen. Jiang family? Wasn't that the domain master? This small undead mentioned the top great families in Central Mainland the moment he spoke. Although the Long family was powerful, they were not in the same class as these two great families. Just a branch from these two great families could easily crush the Long family. Who was this small undead? The more Long Yang heard, the more frightened he felt. Lady Ghost knew that Ming-gu's knowledge of great families was limited to the ancient Yu clan and the Jiang family, so she said, "Holy Son Ming-gu, the Long family, how shall I put it? If the ancient Yu clan and the Jiang family are like this tree." Lady Ghost pointed to a towering tree nearby and then pointed to an ant climbing among the debris. Then that would be the Long family. So they really are smelly grubs, Ming-gu said with a frown. When Long Yang heard the conversation between Lady Ghost and Ming-gu, he felt a chill creeping towards his scalp. He had not expected the powerful Long family to be no more than a smelly grub to these undead. Young master, they are undead from the Temple of Shadows. A middle-aged man who was behind Long Yang blanched when he heard the conversation between Lady Ghost and Ming-gu. What did you say? Long Yang looked shocked. The middle-aged man gulped and said, just now that female undead called the small undead Ming. Holy Son Ming-gu. He is the Holy Son from the Temple of Shadows. Although the Temple of Shadows declined for many years, rumors of it continued to circulate in this mainland. This middle-aged man had heard legends about the Temple of Shadows, and among them had been the name of the Holy Son, Ming-gu. Did you hear wrongly? Temple of Shadows? Holy Son. Long Yang frantically looked at the middle-aged man. At that moment, he was as pale as a piece of paper. The Temple of Shadows was so powerful, it was the supreme temple that had previously dominated the entire mainland. Although it had declined for thousands of years, their Long family was not comparable to them in terms of heritage. I can't be certain, the middle-aged man also panicked. If they had really encountered the Holy Son from the Temple of Shadows, they were all doomed. But I certainly heard them address him in that way. Also, in legends, Ming-gu's physique is like that of a child. I think, there is no mistake. Chapter 1280, Shock 3, Long Yang only felt a chill fill his entire body. He was as frozen and shriveled as a frost-stricken plant. Although Central Mainland was now used to enslaving the undead, none of the powers would dare to offend the Temple of Shadows in the least. Even the domain masters Jiang clan and the ancient Yu clan would not dare to lightly provoke the Temple of Shadows. At that moment, it was not just the Long family members who had guessed Ming-gu's identity. The frightened undead slaves had already discovered who Ming-gu was. Holy Son Ming-gu, it's the Temple of Shadows. It's the great ones from the Temple of Shadows. The undead finally saw a ray of hope. In the hearts of their clan, the Temple of Shadows would always be their sacred ground. At that moment, all the undead slaves were looking at the three great personages from the Temple of Shadows. An elderly undead received a jolt when he saw Yi Qingtang's face clearly. The next second, the elderly undead knelt on the ground, his body quivering. He kowtowed in Yi Qingtang's direction. Greetings. Greetings, Holy Lord. Greetings, Holy Lord of Shadows. The elderly undead's words caused everyone present to gape in shock. The Holy Lord of Shadows. Everyone's gaze converged on Yi Qingtang, their eyes filled with disbelief. Yi Qingtang was also shocked. After all, the Holy Lord of Shadows had been missing for thousands of years. How had this elderly undead recognized her? The elderly undead knelt humbly on the ground and worshipped her respectfully. Now that I have seen the Holy Lord, I will have no regrets even if I die. My ancestors worked for the subsidiary of the Temple of Shadows. I have had the good fortune to see the Holy Lord's picture once. Holy Lord, you have finally returned, the elderly undead spoke mournfully, his voice shaking with emotion. When the undead heard that and noted the respect that the Holy Sun Minggu had shown this lady, they realized that the beautiful young girl before them was indeed the Holy Lord of Shadows. All the undead present instantly knelt before Yi Qingtang and prostrated themselves before her. Holy Lord! A joyous shout rang out. But when the noise entered the ears of Long Yang and the others from the Long family, it was like a death knell that foreshadowed a great calamity. Long Yang's knees turned to water, and he fell to the ground with a plop. He widened his eyes in disbelief as he looked at this charming and faintly smiling girl. He shivered uncontrollably as if he had fallen into an ice pit. Holy Lord of Shadows. How can that be? The Holy Sun Minggu had already shocked him, but he did not expect that, the Holy Lord of Shadows, who had been missing for thousands of years, was standing before him. He had even recklessly spouted nonsense just now and ordered men to send the Holy Lord of Shadows to his room. Long Yang was aghast when he thought of his words. Holy Lord, the Holy Lord of Shadows, 1,000 years ago, she was the most powerful being in Central Mainland. He remembered the prosperity that the Temple of Shadows had gained under the Holy Lord of Shadows' leadership before she disappeared. Long Yang was hard-pressed to believe that the person he had offended was the Holy Lord of Shadows. Young Master, what shall we do? The others from the Long family panicked. They had offended the Holy Lord of Shadows. They were doomed. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.